Under the same moon, we share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We have an exciting show tonight. We're going to cover a lot of ground in regards to what's happening in the United States of America, where most of us live, I would imagine. The president has come forward to announce that there will be a 2-week halt on this whole process in regards to Iran. So we're going to get into that. We're going to look at it from different angles. But tonight we're going to cover all types of information. I just want to make it very clear right from the beginning. Just because I play something doesn't necessarily mean that I believe it. We're looking at so much information. Like, we're going to take a look at J.D. Vance, his speech today. We're going to look at so much information. Sometimes people get distracted because they think it's some sort of narrative or some sort of angle or a bias. Definitely not a bias. We're looking at a lot of information, and that's what the nice thing about Watching the World. We process so much information that it becomes beneficial because we start to look at things from a higher level. Shout out to Mashona. Thank you for becoming a member. That is so awesome to have you. So let's get started right away and figure out what's happening in regards to the whole delay with this war. You know, the deadline tonight was at 8 p.m. So we're going to take a look at that before we dig into J.D. Vance and some of the other events that came out of the White House. Let's take a look at this. As you come in, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Getting some breaking news here about the war. The president has just issued a truth social from the White House saying this: based on conversations with Prime Minister Sharif and Field Marshal Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent.
Now, I just want to say, if you want to keep up with what's happening with the president, it's probably wise to become a member of Truth Social, because that's where most of the information seems to be coming from, right? That's where they get it first.
Tonight to Iran, and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all.
So, as I explained to you guys earlier today, this is the art of war when it comes to the president of the United States. Often he creates this whole persona. He gets a lot of people in faint of fear just to have them come to the table and make a deal. Very similar to his book, The Art of the Deal.
Military objectives, and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. On behalf of the United States of America as president, and also representing the countries of the Middle East, it is an honor to have this long-term problem close to resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Again, just seconds ago, before the deadline for attacks on Iran tonight, and it seems like a deal is in the making. There had been talk, Mark, all day long about maybe this was happening. How do you see this, and how does it play politically here at home?
Well, I think the president had to do it if he could get terms that include an unconditional opening of the strait, which
Because
it sounds
the
like he's
markets
gotten.
had to look at that and say.
He has to do it because, look, people are, in my latest poll, 51% support the war, 54% said it was justified, but 57% said if he could get a good deal, he should take it. So I think it's a risky 2-week period because it enables them to regroup. But on the other hand, the president, if he thinks he has a real opportunity to come out with a negotiated victory, then I think he had to do it.
A lot of people got, really energized about some of the things he posted about, annihilation, civilization. But now he's coming with this deal, Kellyanne. How do you see this big
It's
picture?
the 11th straight year of them in high dungeon about everything he writes.
Yesterday, I explained to you guys how the president often engages in wild talk. I call it the madman theory, where in the same speech, he'll say the opposites. Oh, we're going to take out Iran. Oh, no, we're going to save them. And it's quite confusing, but that's his strategy to try to make all of these deals. But when you hear the president of the United States say, we're going to wipe out an entire civilization, that's not just words to take lightly, but it definitely gets everybody's attention and gets people to the table.
And he said he doesn't care about his critics, but he does care about getting peace and a just cause here. He does care about oil flowing again. If he gets a deal, the ultimate deal maker, part of how he wins these elections, Brett, then that will matter to people. There's one group that he's not mentioning at all. They're called Europe and NATO. It's really fascinating what's happened there in a short amount of time. You even have Vladimir Zelensky running around in these Gulf state countries saying, I'm not getting weapons, I'm giving them to you and giving you our intelligence for the last couple of years in this war with Russia. It's really fascinating what's happened there in short order. NATO's...
I believe we're going to get into it tonight, but as a part of this deal, Iran is supposed to open up the strait for 2 weeks. So that's a part of this deal. And they're supposed to come to the table and perhaps resolve the matter. Now, keep in mind, I want you guys to pay attention because I cover the stock market too. And watch what happens with the stock market tomorrow with this announcement in regards to the president and his stance on Iran. I would not be surprised if the market bounces back tomorrow.
Coming to the White House tomorrow. I think Mark Rutte, the Secretary General himself, has forged a good relationship with Trump, but the NATO countries have not, and he's not even mentioning them as part of this deal. This is all about the countries around Iran. Look, this is what we expect from presidents. You're not going to get a good deal unless you pressure, and they think that you're serious. And
so we have to keep in mind that the president is, in a way, boxing out NATO. But some people say maybe he should because of the way they responded when he asked for help. Others are saying it was not their responsibility. These are the things we see throughout the day, as many say such words in the chat. And we thank you guys for all the comments.
In the same country that sent 155 aircraft in to rescue one of our airmen, if not two, just this past weekend, is a country that is going to do what it takes to keep everyone safe and to push back on the largest state sponsor of terror, but also to tell the people who are relying on the Strait of Hormuz, like Europe, for its energy. We need you to help as well.
I mean, we just did this breakdown of how much flows through that strait. It's remarkable. Our oil does not as much, but fertilizer does. It's a big part of the world.
Right now, Iran is receiving $2 million per ship a day just to get through the strait. So it's quite shocking that they would make a sort of a deal that would inhibit their pockets. But I guess life is prime. But we'll see how this all materializes.
World economy.
Well, it's a big part of the world economy, but the U.S. could sustain a 60 or 90-day war because there's about 20 million barrels a day that we consume. $50 extra, it's about $1 billion a day, a small amount relative in a $30 trillion economy. So we could have withstood it, but on the other hand, I think the markets are going to react very well. And I think, remember that scene from Patton, where Patton goes crazy, and his aide says, the men don't know when you're kidding or when you're not. And Patton says, it's not important for them.
So he basically reiterated what I just said. The market probably will respond favorably to what's happening tonight.
For them to know, it's important for me to know.
Yeah.
So I think we see that today, that the president was tough. He put pressure on Iran, and it looks like they're caving.
So just to reiterate, for viewers who may just be tuning in, the president has just put out a Truth Social saying that there is a deal in the works with Iran, a 10-point plan, negotiating a settlement that.
And by the way, do you guys know what taco means? Dixie says Taco Tuesday. Do you guys put in the chat what taco means? I think a lot of people are not aware of what it means.
Includes the immediate opening of the Strait of Hormuz. We don't know what the other 10 points include, but if it matches previous negotiations, that includes nuclear material. It includes a missile program that would not continue, and we don't know what it means for the neighbors. But this has to be a real breath of sigh of relief.
That's right, Sparta. I believe it says Trump always chickens out. That's what taco means. Thank you.
It certainly
For
is,
Gulf
and I
Arab
think
allies,
that's
especially.
right. And the president said this will be a 4 to 6 week war. We're still within that zone. He also last week reminded us all, Brett, Vietnam 19 years, Iraq War 7 or 8, World War II and Korea 3 years apiece. 4 to 6 weeks. I know we're an impatient country with pace of change and pace of conclusion these days.
So we're going to look at the same context just from a different source to get a different angle on this as well.
Breaking news coming into the newsroom. We are just over an hour out from President Trump's threatened deadline for Iran, and he has just posted what he says an announcement that will delay that by 2 weeks, and that.
Guys, take a moment, hit the like button, share, subscribe. This is our second long live of the day. Long live watching the world. Thank you.
He says will lead to a ceasefire. Let me read you what the president has said, because it's been a matter of great foreign policy intrigue. In a lengthy new post, he says that he's had conversations with Pakistan as an intermediary, and that he agrees to, quote, suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. He calls it a, quote, double-sided ceasefire. The president goes on to write that he has already met and exceeded military objectives and received a 10-point proposal from Iran that has been independently reported, some discussion of that. And he says now that he believes it's a workable basis on which to negotiate. He says that there's basically a kind of agreement between the U.S. and Iran that he claims is already in motion, but a, quote, 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized. This is a major development. On the United States side, you can look at this as the president changing what had been a major foreign policy threat. He had been criticized for basically threatening to target civilians and commit what would be under the Geneva Convention war crimes. That's been controversial.
Okay, Ron John says Trump is treason. Okay, Grumpy says Obama would have gotten on his knees and gave Iran billions.
No matter what. This new post, and it is the style of President Trump's diplomacy that doesn't come from the State Department or even in an address to the public or reporters, but often in his social posts. But this post asserts, and we'll be reporting out what Iran says, that they have something that can give them an off-ramp. 2 weeks without fighting, if it were to hold as a ceasefire, would be.
Put a 1 in the chat if you are a member of Truth Social. Let's see how many people, because that seems to be the main channel of information from the President of the United States.
A major de-escalation and development in this war. This would be a foreign policy and market-moving event. But as with other.
You know, it's interesting. We have this deal going with Iran when they said basically they shut down all channels of communication, right? So how did this deal come to the table? Lisa says, I guarantee Iran didn't propose anything. All right. How shrewd thinking on your part, Lisa.
Claims the president has made. We will have to follow what actually happens and what the other parties say. Again,
Curtis Gilliam says, I think Trump is making this up. He's making it all up, guys. This is what we're starting to see in the chat. Thank you guys for your comments.
All of this is subject to what the president and the United States have been seeking with global energy supply reaching crisis territory, that this would include the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a major development we're following from the president. We will see what Iran says, but a possible off-ramp away from not only those threats, but for potentially 2 weeks without fighting between these countries.
Looks like Iran might not be saying much of anything. Before we get into J.D. Vance's speech today, we're going to check out one more aspect of what happened in regards to the president and Iran?
Certainly ticking tonight as Iranians are preparing for the U.S. and Israel to start bombing power plants and bridges, which may be against international law.
As Natalie Brand tells us, the president is reviewing a new proposal from Pakistan that would implement a 2-week ceasefire in exchange for opening up the Strait of Hormuz.
So keep in mind that this came from Pakistan, so it does substantiate what we're saying in regards to Iran.
Images out of Iran show people forming a human chain near power plants and bridges ahead of President Trump's Tuesday night deadline. In a new escalation of threats, Trump warned on social media that a whole civilization will die tonight, adding that he doesn't want that to happen, but it probably will.
The President of the United States is a man who recognizes leverage, that if the Iranians want to exact a certain amount of pain, the United States has the ability to exact much, much greater pain.
Vice President J.D. Vance, speaking from his trip to Hungary, said he hopes Iran makes the right decision and that there will be a lot of negotiation between now and the deadline.
Fundamentally, the ball is in the Iranians' court.
A spokesperson for Iran's government said messages are being exchanged, but that an agreement cannot be reached with insults.
On Capitol Hill, there's growing alarm and outrage over the president's latest threats, with Democratic lawmakers saying Congress must stop the war.
Congressman Jason Crow, a veteran, said on social media calling for the
Okay, Jeff says, how can you believe anything Trump says? He lied so much. All right.
elimination of a civilization is a war crime, adding the military must only follow lawful orders. Republican Senator Ron Johnson said he hopes the president's words are just bluster.
I do not want to see us start blowing up civilian infrastructure. I do not want to see that. We are not at war with the Iranian people.
Israel says it's already carrying out strikes on Iranian railways and bridges that it says are used by the Revolutionary Guard.
I'm starting to see a lot of people say Taco Tuesdays, right? Trump always chicken out. That's what it stands for. And I'm starting to see it on all different platforms. I guess this type of action causes people to come to that conclusion. Right now, we're going to take a look at what J.D. Vance had to say today. Let's get into that. As you come in, hit the like button, share, subscribe. We're just trying to understand what J.D. Vance has to say about all of this.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to respectfully welcome you all, and I'd like to especially welcome His Excellency J.D. Vance, Vice President of the 50th Vice President of the United States of America, at this press conference on the occasion of his visit to Hungary. I'd like to welcome Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Hungarian and American delegation members. I'd like to ask Prime Minister Viktor Orban to deliver his statement. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you'll allow me, I'm going to speak in my mother tongue, Hungarian. I'd like to respectfully and cordially welcome Vice President Vance in Hungary. The last time a Vice President from the U.S. visited Hungary was 35 years ago, and we haven't had
Caprello says Trump wins again. Trump wins again. All right, thanks.
Such a high ranked American dignitary in Hungary for 20 years. And 20 years, that's quite a long period of time. With the election of President Trump, I believe a golden era has been ushered in our relations. We have enumerated the year of records was 2025 in terms of economic cooperation. 26 also is increasing impetus. We have increased our turnover with 50%, and we had 30 American companies announce FDI to the tune of 100 billion Hungarian forints. We've also strengthened our cooperation, expanded it with space technology and defense. We owe gratitude to President Trump and Vice President Vance for standing by Hungary during the past years. The United States of America is the strongest country in the world, and I am happy to say that they are our allies today. The peace and the security of Hungary, therefore, is guaranteed. Ladies and gentlemen, we also discussed the fact that Europe is heading towards one of the worst energy crises of all times. We are seeing drastic price hikes, and if we do not take measures on time, we are going to see a shortage of energy, oil, and gas. And in this situation, it is especially important that we have the
Guys, the deadline was for tonight, Eastern Standard Time. It has been expanded for 2 weeks. So you have a 2-week window for a deal to be made.
The energy cooperation between the US and Hungary, without which we would not be able to guarantee the energy needs of Hungary, and we could not cap our utility prices. We have talked about the United States' efforts to achieve peace. Hungary has always supported the US and President Trump personally in this peace effort. We've been living in the shadows of a war for 4 years now, and we are convinced that if President Trump were the president in 2022, there would not be a war now. It would not have started. And if the Europeans, especially Brussels, would not be blocking the peace efforts of the president, peace would prevail, would have been reinstated in Ukraine for a long time already. I've also explained to the vice president that Hungary is experiencing a very, very, very harsh and very open interference by foreign security services into our elections. This is why we especially welcome the decisions of the President of the United States of America, with which he has closed the financial taps that supported interference into the elections of other countries. I've been waiting for a long, long time for this meeting, and I'm very grateful that we met today. I am grateful that we were able to discuss with the Vice President the pressing issues, the great issues of Western civilization. I am not sharing any secret when I say that there is a continuous discussion between us, an exchange of experiences related to government work, especially in 4 areas. 1, migration. Number 2, gender ideology. Number 3, family policy. And number 4, global security. Because in these fields, Hungary has amassed substantial experiences and quite an extended network of contacts in Eastern Europe and the Balkans. And as a result of our discussions today, we have agreed that it is in the interest of both parties to continue this cooperation, and that the strategic cooperation between the 2 countries is going to be continuous and will be continued. Thank you very much for honoring us with your presence, for coming to Hungary.
Miniszterelnök úr, köszönöm szépen.
Prime Minister, thank you very much. And now I ask J.D. Vance to deliver his statement.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister, first of all, and thanks to the people of Hungary for welcoming me. This is a beautiful city, a city that I've been to once before on a personal trip, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember the first time that I came to this beautiful country, my wife was about 20 weeks pregnant with our second child. And now we've come back to Budapest, and my wife is 20 weeks pregnant with our 4th child. So there's an interesting way in which our trips to Hungary have rhymed. I also want to thank the President of the United States, who of course is a dear friend of Prime Minister Orban and a very strident supporter of Prime Minister Orban, because together the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Hungary have been able to do amazing things. And we're here because we want to celebrate those amazing things. We want to build upon those amazing things. And of course, I want to help as much as I possibly can the Prime Minister as he faces this election season, which I believe is happening in just about a week, the election to elect the next Prime Minister of Hungary. Now, I don't expect, of course, the people of Hungary to listen to the Vice President of the United States. That's not primarily why I'm here. But I did want to send a signal to everybody, particularly the bureaucrats in Brussels who have done everything that they can to hold down the people of Hungary, because they don't like the leader who has actually stood up for the people of Hungary. And I think it's important to say that. There are so many things that we could point to. There are so many economic pieces of cooperation, so much investment that's come into Hungary from the United States. I think Viktor Orban has been the single most profound leader in Europe on the question of energy security and independence. It is funny to watch prime ministers and leaders in some of the Western European capitals talk about the energy crisis when, frankly, they should have been following the policies of Viktor Orban in Hungary. And if they had, the energy crisis that they're experiencing would be a lot less bad, because what's going on in Hungary right now is that while, yes, energy prices are elevated, they're far less elevated here than they are almost anywhere else in Europe. And that's because of the leadership of the man who's standing next to me. And I think that leadership can provide a model to the continent. We want Europe to be successful. We want European families to be able to afford to heat their homes and to build great things. We want Europe to be energy independent and even energy dominant, but it's not going to be energy secure if it continues to follow the failed policies of the past. And so I think Viktor has been a great example in charting a course that could lead to a better, more prosperous, and more energy secure Europe. There's a lot of other cooperation in technology and artificial intelligence and manufacturing. There are so many ways in which the United States and Hungary have been great economic partners, and that partnership has really accelerated over the past couple of years under President Trump's leadership. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here primarily, Viktor, because of the economic cooperation between our countries. I'm here because of the moral cooperation between our two countries, because what the United States and Hungary together represent under Viktor's leadership and under President Trump's leadership is the defense of Western civilization, the defense of the idea that children should be able to go to school and get educated and not indoctrinated, the defense of the idea that European and American families should be able to transport themselves and be able to afford to heat and cool their homes, the defense of the idea that we are founded on a certain Christian civilization and Christian values that animate everything from...
Can you guys see J.D. Vance is becoming the president of the United States of America? Tell us in the comment section.
Freedom of speech to rule of law to respect for minority rights and protection of the vulnerable. There is so much that unites the United States and Hungary, and unfortunately, there have been too few people who have been willing to stand up for the values of Western civilization. Viktor Orban is the rare exception that has unfortunately proved the rule. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm here because Viktor is a statesman, and we have seen so much talk in European capitals.
Thank you, Lisa, for the super chat. Okay, you're Antifa. Okay, thank you.
About the need to end the war in Russia and Ukraine, and we certainly agree with it. The war would have never started under if President Trump had been president 4 years ago. But now that it has started, probably the two leaders who have done the most to actually end that destructive conflict have been Donald J. Trump and Viktor Orban in Hungary. And they've done it through diplomacy, through talking to people, through trying to understand what the Ukrainians and the Russians need.
Thank you very much, Mary. Appreciate that.
Need to end the war. We're going to continue to participate in that process, but I think that it is a testament to the people of Hungary that you're a country of 10 million people. But I'm telling you, I've sat in all the rooms and I've been on all the phone calls. Your leadership has been a far, far more important and constructive partner for peace than almost anyone anywhere else in the world. And that is a great testament, I think, to the wisdom and the courage of the people of Hungary. And then finally, I just want to say something, one final observation about this election. What has happened in this country, what has happened in the midst of this election campaign is one of the worst examples of foreign election interference that I've ever seen or ever even read about. The bureaucrats in Brussels have tried to destroy the economy of Hungary. They have tried to make Hungary less energy independent. They have tried to drive up costs for Hungarian consumers, and they've done it all because they hate this guy. But I think that what the people of Hungary, what I would encourage them to do is ask themselves the question, not who's pro or anti-Europe, not who's pro or anti the United States of America, but who is pro you, who is pro the people of Hungary. In my experience, I've seen a guy who has ferociously advocated for the interests of Hungary. I'm here to help him in this campaign cycle, and yet when I sat down with Viktor, we didn't talk about politics. We talked about Here are 5 things that we need, that the Hungarian people need from the United States in order to further our partnership and in order to achieve prosperity. That's the kind of leadership that is needed. And on everything from digital censorship, why are bureaucrats in Brussels telling social media companies what information they're giving to Hungarian voters? I think the voters of Hungary are adults. They are sovereign in their own country, and they should be able to look at whatever information they would like to about the election without somebody in a faraway capital treating them like children. Sovereignty, democracy are fundamentally about the people choosing. And part of the reason why we're here and part of the reason why the President of the United States sent me here is because that we think the amount of interference that's come from the bureaucracy in Brussels has been truly disgraceful. I won't tell the people of Hungary how to vote. I would encourage the bureaucrats in Brussels to do the exact same thing. So, Victor, thank you, and it's good to see you. We'll take a couple of questions. Do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
All right, so we get a general idea what's happening. J.D. Vance, nothing major about the war. So we're going to move on from this. We're going to get a really nice breakdown in regards to the war from a professor. We actually went over this before, but I think you guys will enjoy it. Keep an open mind. If you don't like certain points, it is what it is, but it's just information, folks. Nothing to get too alarmed about. Let's get to it and check out what this professor has to say in regards to the war.
This weekend, we have reached a turning point in the war. It is possible that in a few hours or by tomorrow, we will have reached the point of no return. Donald Trump has threatened the Iranians, saying that on Tuesday, if the Iranians still refuse to open the Strait of Hormuz, then the Americans will destroy the Iranian power plants and bridges and universities. Basically, the Americans will start attacking.
Okay, seems like we're having some issue here.
In fact, he's issued many ultimatums to Iran before, and then he sort of tackled, right? Trump always chickens out, and he said, you know what? I said a day, but I'll give you a week instead. But this time, I want to show you that it's different. I want to show you that this weekend, the Americans went all in. They launched a ground invasion. It failed. And instead of saying, you know what? We probably can't beat Iran. Let's negotiate a peace deal. What the Americans will do is they will go all in now and launch a full-scale ground invasion, call a national draft, and the world will never be the same again. Okay? So this is the tweet that Donald Trump sent to the Iranians, and he calls them crazy bastards. Okay? All right. Right here, right? You guys see that? Okay? And this is considered a war crime because you're not supposed to target civilian infrastructure. Now, you can make the argument that this is dual use, meaning that the military uses it as well, but everything is dual use, right? Because the military also uses water. They also use electricity. Their kids also go to university. So there's a great fear now that we're already at the point of no return. And the Iranians themselves have promised to start to attack universities in the GCC as well, okay, in retaliation. So if Trump were
So guys, give me a second. I'm going to play this from a different way so that we could hear it a little bit better. So just bear with me for 1 second. There seems to be a lag when it comes to this, but I'm going to play it from a different angle. So let's see here if I could get this going. All right, very good. Okay, here we go. We're going to play it from a different way.
we will have reached the point of no return. Donald Trump has threatened the Iranians, saying that on Tuesday, if the Iranians still refuse to open the Strait of Hormuz, then the Americans will destroy the Iranian power plants and bridges and universities. Basically, the Americans will start attacking critical civilian infrastructure, which will force Iranians to strike hard against the GCC, the oil fields, the desalination plants, the universities as well. And this would mean that the world would lose 20% of its energy supply. And this would be a catastrophe for the global economy. It would deindustrialize the world and would create global famine, among other problems. Okay, so next few hours, next day, we could reach the point of no return in this war. Hopefully, Trump is bluffing because he has known to bluff before. In fact, he's issued many ultimatums to Iran before, and then he sort of tackled, right? Trump always chickens out, and he said, you know what? I said a day, but I'll give you a week instead. But this time, I want to show you that it's different. I want to show you.
So in a way, that's kind of what happened tonight. We saw this happen again.
That this weekend, the Americans went all in. They launched a ground invasion. It failed. And instead of saying, you know what, we probably can't beat Iran, let's negotiate a peace deal, what the Americans will do is they will go all in now and launch a full-scale ground invasion, call a national draft, and the world will never.
Shout out to you, Jerome. Thank you for supporting the channel. Salute to you as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, lock in with us. I look forward to building with you.
Never be the same again. Okay, so this is the tweet that Donald Trump sent to the Iranians, and he calls them crazy bastards, and he says, praise be to Allah. So a lot of people think he is now deranged. Clearly, he's angry at the Iranians. All right. All right, so the Americans and the Israelis have constantly escalated attacks against civilian targets in Iran. So Trump ordered the destruction of Iran's largest bridge, okay? All right, right here, right? You guys see that? Okay, and this is considered a war crime.
So guys, this is the bridge I was talking about earlier today for lunch. This is the bridge that the United States destroyed that took them so long to build.
Because you're not supposed to target civilian infrastructure. Now, you can make the argument that this is dual use, meaning that the military uses it as well, but everything is dual use, right? Because the military also uses water. They also use electricity. Their kids also go to university. So there's a great fear now that we're already at the point of no return. And the Iranians themselves have promised to start to attack universities in the GCC.
Okay, guys, Uncle Andy says IDF blew that up. All right.
As well, okay, in retaliation. So if Trump were to destroy the Iranian power plants, this would be devastating for the Iranian economy. And there's news now that Iran is organizing a protest where young people are asked to go to power plants and form a human chain so that if the jets come and destroy the power plants, they will be destroyed as well.
The first video I showed you guys tonight showed you the human chain where the young people are basically same thing that happened with Saddam Hussein, having the young people lock in arms and surround the power plant. So I showed you guys this earlier.
So some people think that, okay, this is the Iranians calling the bluff of Trump. That's not a good idea because on the first day of the war, the Americans killed 168 schoolgirls in southern Iran. So this shows that the Americans and the Israelis don't really care about human life. But by doing this, if the Americans actually do destroy power plants and they do kill a lot of young people in the process, what this would do is galvanize the nation into total war, okay? So what's important to understand is that throughout this war, there have been different voices in Iran, okay? Some, like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, want total war. But there are also some who are worried about the economic damage because of this war. They're also worried about giving too much power to the.
Yes, Portia, this is live. I'm not sure what your question is in regards. This is live though.
Military, okay? But
Not the recording we're watching, but I'm live if that's what you're asking.
If Donald Trump goes and attacks these power plants, then the Iranians will be going to total war. They will be totally committed to destroying the American military presence in the Middle East, as well as the global economy, okay? And unfortunately, the Americans and the Israelis don't really care because they're committed to destroying Iran as a viable nation state. Already we're seeing increases in fuel prices, okay? So if you are in the red, it means that you've seen prices go up a lot, okay? If you're on the red. So America, Australia, they've seen prices skyrocket. China has also seen prices skyrocket as well as Europe. This is only just the beginning. We can expect gas prices to skyrocket so much that it essentially collapses the civilian aviation industry, meaning that in the future, if you want to fly, it might cost you 10 times as much as it does now, okay? And this will happen very, very quickly. But again, the main issue, and I need to emphasize this, the main issue is not the fuel. The main issue is the fertilizer. And the fertilizer is important.
Keep in mind, we've been talking about the fertilizer, so he's going to break it down. This professor, I'll put his information in the description area so you guys can follow through. But he's top of the line when it comes to certain subject matter, especially when it comes to war. If nothing else, we profit with some good history lesson, and I think it's abundance.
Because you need fertilizer to grow food, and we are in the planting season. You guys don't know this, but it is because of fertilizer that we are allowed to support 8 billion people. If we didn't have access to fertilizer.
So guys, Jeff down in Georgia, he says fertilizer has already had an impact. So this is definitely affecting our lives.
We can only grow enough food to support 1 to 2 billion people. And unfortunately, this means that Africa and parts of South Asia, a lot of people there will starve to death. So the main concern is famine, okay? Not airline tickets. All right, let's continue. All right. So as this war is progressing, we need to step back and recognize that this is a global war. So the Ukrainians use drones to attack and destroy an oil depot, an oil terminal in Russia. And this means now that 40%, guys, of Russia's oil exports have gone offline, right? So what's happening is that not only is the Strait of Hormuz closed, but the Americans are also attacking Russia's oil, okay? So you have drone strikes in terminals, but also you don't see this in the news, but also there's basically a naval blockade. So if you are a Russian oil tanker, if the Americans come and catch you, they'll take your oil, okay? So this is basically piracy. So in other words, the American strategy before was, okay, before we were the world's global reserve currency. And as a result, we encouraged global trade. But now that we are not, our economy is suffering, well, let's just control the sea lanes, okay? So that's American strategy moving forward. All right. Some major news from Germany is that if you are a German male under 45, okay, basically from 17 to 45, this age group, you are not allowed to leave the country for more than 3 months without army permission. This is a prelude to a national draft, okay? And why is Germany doing this? Because Germany is an industrial nation. And if Russian energy supply goes offline, if energy from the GCC goes offline, Germany has no choice but to remilitarize and create its own energy supplies, okay? So Germany must go to war. It has absolutely no choice in the matter. All right, so let's talk briefly about what's going to happen over the next year. So as I said before, the United States was the global reserve currency. And that meant basically that for every transaction that you made with US dollars, they could tax you, okay? Because they could inflate the price of the US dollar. But now that people are choosing to opt out of the US dollar, for example, in China, people are buying more gold, right? And people are using other currencies. America, in order to maintain its empire, has to change its strategy. Now, the main source of American power is its ability to control sea lanes, okay? Because it has military bases all around the world, okay? So in the red, these are all areas with US bases. And before, it used these US bases in order to maintain global trade. But with nations choosing to opt out of your system, now your strategy is to blockade them, right? Create a naval blockade, starve them of resources, which forces them to come beg to you for trade access, okay? So we've gone from a strategy where America guaranteed global trade to America basically being a mafia state, being pirates, and allowing you to use sea lanes and giving you trade access. Okay, does that make sense? And believe it or not, but America does not actually need to do that much work in order to control trade around the world. It just needs to control certain trade or certain choke points, okay? So the Panama Canal is one choke point, and that's why about a third of America's Navy is deployed to the Caribbean right now, all right? And its main purpose is to block off trade in the Western Hemisphere. So if you are China, if you're Japan.
Remember how I showed you guys that we have ships around Haiti and all through the Caribbeans, right? It all makes sense.
And you are South Korea, if you want to access Western resources, Western Hemisphere resources, you need the permission from the US government. And the example, of course, is Venezuela, where they removed the president, and now they basically have a blockade over Venezuela. And so the Venezuelan government is very cooperative, okay? They're basically all very obedient.
So here at Watching the World, I've been attending Nicolas Maduro's trial. The United States went into Venezuela, extracted him, brought him and his wife. And by the way, his wife was beaten to a pulp. In court, her face was battered. In fact, she asked the judge if she could have her ribs examined because this is immediately after they were brought to the United States. They were brought into Newburgh, New York, and now they're down in Brooklyn at the MDC, pretty much the same jail where Sean Diddy Combs and Tekashi 6ix9ine, where these individuals are. But what he's helping us to understand that as a part of the United States going in to take control and extract Nicolas Maduro, who I've been in court with, he stated to the judge, I was there as a witness, that he was kidnapped. He would say that every chance he got while he's been in court, he's had 2 court appearances. But what he's showing you is that as a part of extracting Nicolas Maduro, the United States is also camping out outside of Venezuela and controlling the waters, the seas. And it's a bigger play than what really meets the eye.
So what we can expect next is for Trump to exert authority over Greenland. Why? Because this is the Arctic choke point, okay?
So I was showing you guys earlier today, the president is going after Greenland, which is technically an ally. Also Venezuela. Now we're going over and tackling Iran. We're really grabbing resources from around the world, right? This is becoming very dominant. I don't think it has anything to do with what was happening in Iran at this time. If you go back to Donald Trump's first presidency, he already had his eyes on Iran, but he lost his bid against Joe Biden, so that halted what they already had in store. So when he came back in office, Iran, Venezuela, these places are just a part of the program, a part of the plan, and Israel is a key ingredient to all of this.
Which gives you access to Canada and to Europe as well. We can also expect America to basically create a choke point over the Strait of Hormuz, right? So right now, the issue is that the Iranians control the Strait of Hormuz, but the Americans can also choose to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, does that make sense? All right. The major choke point in the world, of course, is something called the Strait of Malacca. Why? Because this is where China gets most of its resources from Africa, from the Middle East, okay? Through this very small choke point. And again, unfortunately, there are lots of US military bases in this area. So as long as America is able to maintain these three major choke points, the Panama Canal, the Middle East, and the Strait of Malacca, oh, and also, sorry, Greenland as well, then America can control naval access, okay? Trade access, maritime navigation. It can control all these things. And so what's gonna happen is this. The big event this year, moving forward, is that Russia will militarize its shadow fleet. Okay? Basically, Russia has a shadow fleet of about 1,000 ships. It will provide mercenaries to these ships, and then it will start to engage America in the oceans. The point is not to defeat the American Navy. You can't do that, okay? The point is to create a war of attrition, where you know that the Americans will have problems rebuilding these ships. And these ships are pretty old as well. And
So earlier this week, we went over how Russia, basically the president of the United States allowed Russia to move ships into Haiti as well. So this is right on target.
Sailors on them are pretty tired. So you just force them into conflict, and then this naval capacity of the United States will degrade over time, okay? This is something to look out for over the next year or 2 years. This conflict in the seas that will arise between Russia and the United States, okay? And then you ask yourself, okay, well, how about China? Because China is actually the main beneficiary of oceanic trade. And China is going to do China, which is to say that China is going to try to negotiate between Russia and America and try to triangulate the two and try to come to peace with all two, okay? And that often means paying both off, paying both the Russians and paying the Americans off. And that's what happened in May when Trump visits China, right? Okay, we'll talk more about that later on. Okay, so the big news this weekend, and this is something I want to focus on for the rest of the lecture, is the Americans said that one of their jets, called an F-15, this is about a $90 million plane, okay? It was shot down over Iran, okay? Basically in this area right here. And you ask yourself, okay, the Americans have air supremacy over Iran, so how is it possible for the Iranians to shoot down a plane? And the answer is this. The US Air Force is not designed to fight a long war. It's designed to fight at most a 2-week war. If you fight for too long, you have certain issues. One issue is maintenance, okay? Which is, these are very expensive planes. They require a lot of maintenance. But if they're flying too much, if they have too much work, they suffer from wear and tear, okay? Another issue is just fatigue, where these pilots are being asked to work too hard, they get tired, they get lazy. Now, the last thing is this, Iranian resilience. Okay, and all this means is that as you're bombing the Iranians have to figure out how to strike back at you. Their radar systems don't really work, so what they use is heat-seeking missiles, okay? So rather than try to figure out where you are, they fly missiles up in the air and hope to lock onto your heat signature and knock you down, okay? All right, so over time, all this means is that as this war progresses, if you insist on fighting an air war, you're gonna lose more and more planes. As your pilots get tired, as maintenance issues arise, as the Iranians become much more creative in their response, okay? So a pilot was shot down and 2 pilots were able to eject safely out of their plane. Now, it is the policy of the American military to leave no man behind. And this is the Americans are one of the few militaries actually do this, where if you're behind enemy lines, they will try to rescue you. And they spent years training you on how to evade enemy captors. They'll spend a lot of resources trying to save you. And the propaganda is that this is just show.
Okay, guys, Jeff says, I pray my kids will have a better future than what I've seen. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Show you how Americans really value human life. And it's something that Americans are very proud of. But another reason why Americans do this is this optics, which is that the Americans believe that the military.
Okay, Jerome makes a good point. Jerome says our president's first mistake was using Israel intelligence. I know they exaggerated and lied. Very good. Thank you, Jerome. Nice having you here.
Is invincible. And they spend a lot of money and resources in order to create this image, this aura of invincibility and invisibility. So if the Iranians are able to capture a pilot and have him appear on Iranian TV, this is a huge propaganda win for the Iranians. Meaning that if the Americans will try your best, the Americans will try their best to save you, but they can't save you, and there's a risk that the enemy will capture you, they'd rather have you killed, okay? Because they can't afford to lose this propaganda war. For the Americans, everything is optics. As I will show you later on, this is going to be a huge issue in this war, okay, as this war progresses. Now, there are a lot of issues with the story that's being told to us, okay? So Americans said that they have successfully evacuated both pilots. They have saved both pilots. But the issue is this. The issue is that we know that the Americans created a makeshift landing strip, basically an airport, a small airport, 200 kilometers from where the airman actually was knocked down. So he had to hike a long way in order to get to the landing strip. Also, he was injured. I think he broke his ankle or something, okay? So that was very, very hard to do. Also, he's trying to evade enemy capture, okay? So this story doesn't really make sense. And why did the Americans decide to create a landing strip here rather than someplace closer? And why would you need 155 planes for this operation, right? Aren't you better off with just one or two to like avoid enemy fire? So this is a very strange story, but it gets weirder, okay? It turns out that the Americans basically spent a lot of resources to save the pilot. It took 48 hours, and the CIA created a lot of distractions. And the Americans spent a lot of resources to save the man while the Iranians were trying to capture him, okay? And this led to the destruction of very expensive
Jerome, that ceasefire is supposed to be from both sides, but from what I'm understanding, Pakistan is the ones that were making the deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if, a lot of people were saying earlier in the chat that they don't feel that Iran has said anything and that perhaps we're just being blowing smoke, right, up the rear. That's what some people feel. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some aggression from Iran, but this might be a real deal. Only time will tell, but it's supposed to be a ceasefire from both sides.
American planes. Okay, these are called C-130, so they're transport planes. And they were destroyed in the rescue operation. Now, the American story is that these planes were caught in the sand. They couldn't lift off. So Delta Force, the commandos who were trying to save the pilot, they blew up the planes themselves, okay? And as you can see, the Americans in this operation, they lost a lot of expensive planes. The estimates are the Americans lost $300 million in planes. And even though the Americans say that there were no casualties in this rescue, we can expect that there were casualties in this rescue because a lot of planes were destroyed, okay? And again, these are very expensive planes. And throughout this war, the Americans have lost quite a few planes. The C-130 are extremely expensive, okay? All right. Okay. All right, so this has led people to question whether or not the narrative is.
Now, when it comes to Israel, well, we pretty much know Israel pretty much do whatever they want to. So we'll just have to see how that develops.
True or not. Now, you can make the argument that this narrative is true. You can make the argument that the American military prides itself on no man left behind, so they will do whatever they can, move heaven and earth to save that person. And that's something that the Americans take pride in. But again, there are issues with this narrative. So this is a man named Arnon Bertrand, and on Twitter, he explains that this story doesn't really make sense, okay? So the first thing is, how did a fighter jet, American fighter jet, get knocked down in Iran when the Americans have said that they have air supremacy over the country?
A good way to answer that question about the ceasefire, if you look back on Israel and the ceasefires that they had with Gaza and other places, that'll give you a clear indication of how Israel operates under these type of circumstances. So don't be surprised if you hear something pop off, basically.
Another issue is that the weapons systems officer is a colonel. A colonel is a very high-ranking individual in the American military. So why would he participate in this operation? That's very strange. And even though he was injured, seriously wounded, according to Trump, he still managed to hike up a 7,000-foot mountain ridgeline and hide in the crevice in the Zagros Mountains for 48 hours despite his wounds. Also, we don't know who he is. He's never been identified. He was never interviewed by the press, which is unusual because if you rescue the man, you make him into a national TV star, right? So there are a lot of issues with this story, all right? So Emma, could you do me a favor and just read the summary?
So to sum up, anti-aircraft equipment that supposedly didn't exist shot down an F-15 and apparently an A-10 Warthog the same day. A seriously wounded man climbed a 2.1 kilometers mountain. The U.S. seized an airfield 200 miles inside a country it's at war with, next to one of its most strategic nuclear sites, and deployed hundreds of troops, all apparently unimpeded. Lost 2 planes to sand and destroyed their own helicopters. Videos show heavy clashes, missiles raining down, but not a single person got even wounded. And the man at the center of it all, nobody knows who he is, completely anonymous, 0 pictures, but Trump says he is safe and sound. And so is the rescued A-10 Warthog pilot.
And just so you know, JCat, we're going to go through the demands. We're going to go through the demands from Iran, guys. So sit tight. We're going to get into all that tonight. Shout out to Jerome for becoming a new member. Shout out to you. Thank you. Nice to have you here. I'm excited to have you on the team.
Who also remains anonymous.
Okay, so again, this story makes absolutely no sense. We don't understand why they had to build an airport. We don't understand how these planes got destroyed. And the fact that there are no casualties absolutely makes no sense whatsoever, okay? So maybe something else is going on. And people online are speculating that this was actually a failed ground invasion. And the mission was to sneak into Iran's nuclear power plant located in the area and steal Iran's enriched uranium, which it would need to build a nuclear weapon, okay? And by doing that, you deny the Iranians' capacity to build a nuclear weapon, and you can declare a victory, okay? All right, so what's the evidence for this? Well, on March 7th,
so this is the main reason why I'm playing this video, because if what he's saying is correct, that means the government was not honest with the American people when they said that this plane was shot down. Basically, and the narrative is there that they actually was trying to do a ground operation, but they're spinning it a different way. So let's pay attention to this part.
2026, so at the beginning of this war, a journalist named Barak David Barak Ravid wrote an article in Axios, which is a Washington-based media outlet, saying that the U.S. is considering sending special forces to seize Iran's nuclear stockpile. Okay. Now, Barak Ravid is famous in Washington D.C. because he's very close with the Israelis. He himself is Israeli, so he's able to get a lot of information from the government. Okay. So from March 7th onward, there was news reporting that the Americans would insert special forces to steal the uranium. No one took this seriously because it's so stupid.
So, guys, you're not getting this. This is not my thoughts. I'm just trying to help you have a rounded view. But Iran, some of their individuals are reporting that the Americans were actually trying to break in to steal the uranium, and that they basically were lying about this whole airman being lost, that's all just bull, okay? So this is what he's also explaining at a high level.
Stupid. Are you seriously going to send in like 100 guys into the middle of Iran and like hope they can sneak into a military base and steal that uranium and then run away? That's just retarded. No one would do that, okay? So everyone's like, this is just a psyop. This is just disinformation, okay? No one took this seriously. I didn't take this seriously at all. But then, 4 days ago, a week ago, the Washington Post leaks a Pentagon plan to do exactly that. And it's a very detailed plan that involves hundreds or thousands of troops, okay? And the idea is to build a landing strip near the power plant in order to land forces, in order to land equipment. So this is a very detailed plan. The problem, so when this first came out, again, I didn't take it seriously because this is so retarded. Are you seriously gonna build an airport by yourself in the middle of Iran and hope the Iranians don't notice? And you're gonna land 1,000 troops in the middle of mountains where they're gonna rain missiles on you? It makes no sense whatsoever, okay? But unfortunately, if you just look at what happened this weekend, this is the plan they used, where they sent 155 aircraft to try to create a landing strip. They sent in special forces. It was exactly the plan that Washington Post reported on, okay? But then the question is, wait a minute here. This is a top secret military plan. How did the Washington Post get this? Well, the answer is because we assume that some generals gave it to them, all right? Peter Hegseth, the Secretary of War for Donald Trump, fired the top generals for the military. And we don't know why. There was never a reason given. We can suspect what happened was this. Donald Trump asked the generals to come up with a plan to steal the uranium. And the generals are like, let's just humor him, okay? Let's come up with this stupid, insane plan that there's no way this guy would agree to, and then we'll forget about it. They presented Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's like, this is a brilliant plan. This is a great movie. Let's do this, guys. The generals are like, oh my God, he is insane. Oh my God, we are so screwed, man. And they refuse to carry it out. So Peter Hegseth is like, well, then you're fired, okay? And then Peter Hegseth orders the new generals to execute this plan. So again, we don't know what happened. We'll never know what happened, but the evidence suggests that this might have been a failed ground invasion. Another piece of evidence to suggest that this was a failed ground invasion.
See, this is what Iran is actually reporting, but we receive a whole story about the airmen being saved and all of that. So you just have to figure out who do you want to believe when it comes to all of this information.
With the intention of stealing the uranium is that the Iranians were able to recover ID in the crash site, okay? And it turns out that this woman happens to specialize in nuclear technology, an engineer. Why would you need an engineer who specializes in nuclear technology to rescue a pilot? Right? That's kind of strange. And the Americans have done stupid things like this before, okay? So in 1980, the Americans implemented something called Operation Eagle Claw. And the idea was that at this time, the Iranians had taken hostages, American hostages in Tehran, the American embassy, okay? So Jimmy Carter, the president, authorized a rescue operation. So, but Iran was too big. So what they did was the American military set up a forward operating base in the desert, halfway between Persian Gulf and Tehran. When they landed in their base, there's a sandstorm, and a lot of their planes malfunction. And they recognized that, oh my God, it's really hard to go through such an operation in Iran, so we should just go home, okay? So that was 1980, when Americans were pretty sane. Unfortunately, Americans are no longer sane, okay? This is January 3rd, when the Americans swept into Venezuela and kidnapped their president Maduro, thus ending the conflict between Venezuela and America. This is great TV. The plan worked out perfectly. It showed that Delta Force was invincible. And unfortunately,
Thank you, Eric. Nice to see you. Jerome, we're going to help you with that if you're having some issues. I think Mashona would probably be able to direct you to. I think she just gifted some memberships, if I'm not mistaken.
Donald Trump believes this, okay? He believes that if we did this in Venezuela, we can do this in Iran. And this explains how and why Donald Trump would agree to such an insane plan as to try to build an American military base in the middle of your enemy, okay? So the main message here is that whoever is leading America, whether it's Donald Trump or other people, for whatever reason, they believe that optics is all that matters, okay? They think that reality is a movie, a Hollywood movie. And if they can script it properly, then the movie will turn out to be a wonderful, wonderful thing, okay? This is a war about optics rather than strategy.
Okay, guys, JCat says, when was the last time Trump told the truth on anything? Thank you, JCat.
And unfortunately, this is just how America's going to fight the war from now on, okay? So let's just discuss what you need to win a war. If you are fighting a war, what are 3 things you need to look at, okay? And there are 3 things, and that's it. First thing you want to look at is economics. Okay, economics. Second thing you want to look at is organization. The third thing you want to look at is logistics. All right? So what do I mean by this? Well, the first thing is resource management.
So I just want to take a quick break. Stella, could you also assist Jerome? He's trying to give some memberships. So thank you guys very much.
In other words, you're trying to win a war as cheaply and as quickly as possible. Okay? Unfortunately, right now, the Americans are not fighting a war of economics. If you're spending $300 million in military equipment in order to rescue a pilot, you're not going to win this war. Okay? So economics is really important. Second is the idea of organization, which is the implementation of strategy. Right? So you have a strategy, and then you implement it. And here, what's really important is the simpler the strategy, the easier it is to implement. Okay? You want the strategy to be very simple because you have to organize it, implement it. So if you're trying to build an air base in the middle of Iran so you can extract uranium from the Iranians, that's not a good organization, okay? This thing is going to blow up in your face. The third issue is logistics, which is just supply, okay? Supply. Making sure that your forces have the necessary equipment, the resources in order to fight the war effectively. And right now, the Americans are not concerned with any of these issues, economics, organization, and logistics. But these are the three major issues that you will need to figure out if you want to win a war, okay? And unfortunately, right now, the Americans are too much focused on optics and narrative. So that's why I think the Americans will ultimately lose this war, because the Iranians are actually fighting a real war where they're trying to win the war as cheaply as possible, where they're implementing a very simple strategy that allows for proper organization, and they are trying to maintain logistics, okay? The Americans are just trying to win the war in the most Hollywood fashion as possible. And this is going to lead to disaster, both in the short term and the long term. So the question then is, why do Americans like this? And unfortunately, the answer is because there's too much cooperation between Hollywood and the Pentagon. All right, so this is a movie, Saving Private Ryan, and this was made in the year 1998, okay? And this is one of the highest grossing films in Hollywood history, where a private named Ryan, of course, he is lost behind enemy lines in Europe. And his brothers are all killed. So his mother writes a very angry letter to General Marshall and says, all my sons are dead except for one, and he's missing. And so General Marshall is...
Thank you to Anderson for gifting a membership. Thank you so much for all the support of the channel.
Like, we can't have this, okay? This makes us look bad. We have to win the home front, okay? Europe, this war front, it's secondary to the home front. We need to make sure that the American people are fully behind this war. So he sends a team led by this man, played by Tom Hanks, to go and save Private Ryan. And they do, but at the cost of his life, okay? And this movie is based on a letter that Abraham Lincoln wrote to a mother in the American Civil War, okay? 1864. And this is considered one of Abraham Lincoln's most brilliant pieces of writing. Okay, so Amber, could you help me read this, please?
Dear Madam, I have been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Yours very sincerely and respectfully, A. Lincoln.
Great, okay. The sacrifice upon the altar of freedom, okay? So our democracy, our republic, is our God. And our sacrifice is worth it as long as we can maintain our freedom and our liberty, okay? And this is the defining theology of the American military. All right. This has led to the military.
Thank you, Stella. We'll just have to work with Jerome to figure it out as time goes on.
Military becoming more of a propaganda machine. Okay, so this is a movie, Black Hawk Down. If you saw the movie, then it's about these special forces, Delta Force, that go in and save a pilot when his helicopter was brought down in Somalia. Okay, and this was based on a book by Mark Bolden, writing about the incident, which happened in the late 90s. Okay, right. The problem is that this movie is complete BS. In the book, what happened was that the helicopter was brought down and the pilot was taken hostage by the Somalis. but he was treated very well. And eventually, he was allowed to go home after the government paid a ransom.
Oh man, we have to stop the show. Jerome gifted 10 memberships. Man, that is awesome. Thank you for blessing the people with memberships. That is so amazing, man. Thank you so much. It's nice to have you on the team. I look forward to building with you. Guys, give a shout out to Jerome. He just blessed you guys with 10 memberships. Anderson also gave memberships. We have an amazing group of people here, and we're all trying to navigate through life together, trying to figure these things out. And what a great way to do it, to really check out this professor to help us understand the war at a higher level, because I'm pretty sure most of us don't go around trying to figure out wars or thinking about wars. So it's good to have a nice refresher. Jeff Springer says, Mel, you bring out the best in us. All right. Thank you very much. Nice to be a part of the team with you guys. Jerome says, great show. I support great people. My heavens. Thank you very much. That's really nice of you.
Okay, that's what happened in real life. But in the movie, what happened was that Delta Force went in and saved the pilot from those trying to kidnap him. And this goes back to the mythology of no man left behind. Now, there's a very important scene in Black Hawk Down where a general confronts Delta Force. And Delta Force was created for operations like this. And what the general says to Delta Force is, you guys are a bunch of cowboys. And what he's saying is that you guys, you Delta Force, you Special Forces, you guys think you're superior to everyone. You think that we all revolve around you. You think that we should all serve you. You guys are ego-driven. All you care about is glory for yourself. And eventually, your ego, your arrogance, are going to be your downfall, as well as the downfall of the American military. Okay? This is the movie. This is Jessica Lynch. And in 2003, she was serving in the war in Iraq. And her team got lost, and they were ambushed by the Iraqis. And then she was kidnapped, but then because she was injured, the Iraqi military, sent her to a hospital, a civilian hospital. And the people in the hospital treated her very, very well. And they actually tried to send her home in an ambulance. But when the ambulance tried to reach the Americans bombed the ambulance, so the ambulance had to turn back. But the Iraqis informed the Americans where she was and told the Iraqis, told the Americans, you can come and pick her up anytime, okay? She's safe, we're taking care of her, but if you want to take her home, it's okay. The Americans' response organized special forces to go and rescue her, even though she was not in danger. And the media reported that she was raped, she was beaten, and she was held hostage. Okay? So that's what the Pentagon does. The Pentagon is a propaganda machine. It doesn't care about the truth. It just cares about trying to create a Hollywood movie out of a movie. Okay? So Pentagon is concerned first and foremost about creating a Hollywood movie out of a war. That's its mentality. We know this because Jessica Lynch.
So I just want to take a moment here. Remember the other night when the president came on for a special announcement at 9 p.m. and everybody was thinking, oh, what is this going to be about? We're going to learn something about the war. Perhaps we're pulling out or we won, whatever it may be. But then we started to realize that that whole speech was basically maybe a way to secure more money in regards to this war. But also, as we're watching this tonight, we began to realize that that whole speech was basically about how the military was able to go in and extract these airmen, which now is coming out in the media that perhaps that was not the accurate stories. Perhaps this mission was more about trying to secure the uranium, right? So it's nice to be able to watch this and start to realize how this works at a higher level.
After she was set free, went on TV and said that the military is lying about the incident. I was never beaten. I was never in danger. The people in the hospital treated me very nice. In fact, the nurses sang me to sleep because they were so concerned about my welfare. All right. So this is a huge problem for the American military, for the Pentagon, as they fight this war. You can pull this crap when you're fighting Somalis and Iraqis, but against the Iranians, you need total war. You need to focus on economics, organization, and logistics. Stop doing this crap of optics, okay, and narrative. Unfortunately, it is now the very mentality of the Pentagon to turn war into a Hollywood.
JL, according to reports, Iran has uranium that has been enriched 60%, and that's what they're after.
Movie, all right? So this is a paper written by Tanner Merlis at Brown University, and what this author talks about is how the Pentagon and Hollywood are aligned together. All right, so can you read the three major takeaways, Amber?
In exchange for the use of military equipment and personnel, movies and TV program producers must comply with Pentagon entertainment policy, including script changes to align with military goals, including recruitment and public relations. Since the inception of the Hollywood entertainment industry more than a century ago, over 2,500 war-themed movies and TV programs have been made with Pentagon assistance. Pentagon-assisted movies and TV shows framed U.S. wars as necessary and glorious, downplaying or ignoring the human, social, and environmental devastation war causes, particularly for civilians. U.S. soldiers are typically cast as noble protagonists, while those non-U.S. peoples.
JL, I understand your position, but when they did the Midnight Hammer, the president actually came out and he said basically that they had inhibited Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, right? I don't want to use the B word for the sake of YouTube. And I think that's what really threw everybody off, because when they did the mission, the uranium that has been enriched for 60% was so deep into the earth that they could not retrieve it. So that's a big part of this mission now. So even right now, when they're making a deal and we hear about 2 weeks, unless Iran is going to hand over the uranium, there's not going to be a solid deal. So there's so many moving parts. And unless we actually learn more about it and get all the details, we just go along for the ride, not fully understanding all the particular parts. But thank you very much for that.
Deemed enemies of America are constantly stereotyped.
Okay, so what this paper is saying is that the Pentagon uses Hollywood in order to indoctrinate and brainwash American people to believe that war is good. Okay, so that's true. But what's also true is that by working.
So, guys, one of the reporters had said to the president, I'll actually play it tomorrow for lunch when I have the show, right? But basically, they were saying, well, will Iran charge a toll for ships to come through the Strait of Hormuz, right? And so the president says, you asked the question wrong. We're going to be charging a toll. So it's obvious that the president has his eyes set on perhaps taking control of the strait. And maybe he's being true, not just being facetious about charging a toll. The U.S. can make money, but they have to first get control of it, right? Now, keep in mind, when this war started, a lot of people don't want to call it a war, but when it started, the strait was open. So now we're fighting to open something that wasn't even closed when we went in. So that's the whole factor. I already broke down for you guys that I've been to court with Maduro here in New York twice. We went in and took the oil. We have control pretty much. In this case of Iran, the United States definitely want to control the oil. That's a part of this whole deal as well. And the third component is that we need to take access of the uranium, or we're back to square zero or square one. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So do not be confused about this 2-week delay, because if those three main points are not a part of this deal, we're just heading nowhere fast, but you're going to hear a lot of different propaganda, and it may not be totally true. In fact, he's breaking it down that when it comes to the Pentagon, they want to spin the narrative on this war just like a movie. And that's why this story about the young lady who they said all these things happened to her, and then she came forth and says, no, that didn't happen to me. But it sounds like a great story, and that's why we hear so many different narratives. I'll just tell you this one little bit. When it comes to Luigi Mangione, I covered his state trial. I also covered his federal trial. And now the trials actually start. The state starts in June. The federal starts. It's been kicked off to start next year. But one of the key things when he was arrested in McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, the thing that came out in court was why was the police officers lying to Luigi Mangione in regards to that's how they were trying to throw out his backpack that had the weapon, also had his journal in it. And they're saying, why could the police be lying to him? But then as they brought in the police officer says that when they go to training, they're taught that they can lie to civilians, they can create a ruse, they can do whatever they have to do to extract the truth out of a criminal or potential criminal, right? So the government, what we're learning here, a lot of the stories that we might hear, all these stories about the airmen that are being saved, and it's like Hercules, Hercules, right? All this great and glorious moments. At the end of the day, it just might be a narrative to help the government, the military, reach their objectives, and it may not be hardline true stories, and that's fine. And it's very similar to the police being able to lie to you too, just to get their point across and extract what they need. So it is what it is, but he's helping us understand the background, and this is tremendous information.
Hollywood, it brainwashes the Pentagon to believe that war can be like Hollywood. It can be perfected. As long as you create a good script, it will work out in the end. Okay, and this will lead to disaster in Iran. So think about, again, Donald Trump, where it's a failed
Yes, Eric, we actually went over there earlier today. You're absolutely correct about the Red Sea.
ground invasion. And so if it's a failed ground invasion, what you do is you go back, you sit down with Pentagon planners, and you figure out what went wrong and how to never make the mistake again. But Donald Trump does not want to admit it was a failed ground invasion, so they made up a stupid Hollywood movie, a stupid Hollywood script, that this was a rescue of an American pilot, that it will turn into a Hollywood movie at some point. And so from their perspective, this is a huge success, okay? And this is going to lead to problems because if it's a huge success, then do it again, right? And if people think it's failure, prove that they're wrong by having successive ground invasion, all right? So unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that America right now, the American military, it's too dominated by special forces, by Delta Force, by Navy SEALs, who are interested only in their own personal glory. Okay, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying there's quite a lot of them who understand that.
That's right, Michael. The art of war, never underestimate your enemy. Great point. Thank you very much.
After this war is over, they can sign a book deal. They can write a book, make millions of dollars, which will be turned into a movie, and then they'll be a superstar. Okay, so that's how they think. And what they should be thinking about are organization, logistics, and economics, because these are the three things that win wars. All right? Okay, any questions, guys?
Okay, before we get to that, JCat is breaking it down. Thank you. As a part of the deal, JCat says Iran ceasefire agreement. Iran keeps the uranium and the control of this strait. Okay, will the president and his cohorts go for that? That's a whole different story, but that's 2 points. Thank you.
I personally also think that America is likely to make a movie about saving the pirates in Iran, but I think it will be similar as Saving Pirate Ryan. But could you please tell me whether the plot of Saving Private Ryan is true or is just made it up?
Yeah, it's just a made up movie. Yeah, most of these things are made up. Okay, they didn't really turn out the way that they do. But like the problem.
Okay, Jerome says, very ironic. We had an explosion at the Panama Canal yesterday. They're not talking about it. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll cover that tomorrow at lunch.
With Hollywood is that it's so seductive, it's so attractive that people think they're true, okay? People think that the movie is more true than real life. And that's how not only the Pentagon works, but also like all of American society works now. Americans live in their own fantasy world created by Hollywood. And the realities of war are too far away for them to care about, okay? I mean, Americans think that, oh, at worst case scenario, the food prices will go up. They can't really imagine how this war will forever change the world as well as America. Okay? Yep.
How many more of these spectacles do you think America can afford recreating? Or let's say, how many more times would America like learn to understand that this optical Hollywood act will no longer work for their plan? Will they ever work?
Okay, that's a great question. The answer is they will never.
Guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Also hit the hearts to keep us in the algorithm. Thank you.
Ever learn, okay? Because they live in a different reality. Like Donald Trump surrounds himself with people who just tell him what he wants to hear. And the reason why he's able to go in front of the press and say, what a great success that we had in saving the pilot, okay? The reason why he's able to do that is because he himself believes this, okay? He lives in an alternate reality, a fantasy land. And that's why he's able to so convincingly tell the press and American people that this was a great success, even though if you look at the evidence, this was a tremendous failure. And unfortunately, this will not change. As this war continues, you have more incidents like this. We just say it's a failure.
So we saw this the other night, right? Everybody was wondering, what is this big speech about 9 o'clock at night? And the president came out and he really made it a movie about these airmen being rescued, right? So this falls right in line.
That the American military and Donald Trump spin as a tremendous success. And so the American people will continue to believe that this war is going well, okay? And we know this because this is exactly what happened in Ukraine. For the past few years, Russia has been dominating the battlefield and has been killing many, many Ukrainians. It's been a disaster for Ukraine, but you don't know this if you're American, if you're an average American, because the news tell you that this war is going great. One more day, guys, and Putin will fall. One more day, the Russian economy will collapse, the Russian people will revolt, and Putin.
It's good to see you, country carpenter. Always good.
Putin will be out of office. One more day, and Ukrainians will reach Moscow. Okay? Same situation here, where one more day, and Iran will surrender. One more day, the Iranian economy will collapse, the people will revolt, and then we'll have peace in the Middle East. Okay? So unfortunately, this is modern war where it's really about optics.
All right, DJ Genesis is in the building. Go check out her channel. She has a solid channel. DJ Genesis Detroit. To answer your question, he focuses primarily on the war and things associated as far as history and so forth. I don't think he gets into the personal health of the president of the United States.
Again, if you want to win this war, don't focus on optics, because ultimately, you're the one fooling yourself. Okay? Yep.
But despite that, America is drawn in this kind of Hollywood and war scene, but I think they still hold dominant position and still holds the strongest military weapon in the world, and they still have, the sovereignty to state and control many of those countries. How can you explain that?
Okay, you're absolutely right in that America is still the empire, and America will not fall because of this war. Worst case scenario, they lose.
Thank you, Connie, for all the support. I really do appreciate you doing that. That's awesome.
They go home, okay? So one thing that I want us to think about is that the strategic objectives of the Americans and the Iranians are not actually in conflict with each other, okay? If you look at the Iranians, they want to get America out of the Middle East, all right? They want to destroy the global economy, and they want to deter Israel. Okay, does that make sense? These are the three strategic objectives of Iran: to remove America out of the Middle East forever, to deter Israel. You can't destroy Israel because Israel has a nuclear weapon, but you show Israel you're strong and you can hurt them if Israel goes too far. And you want to destroy the global economy because you want to reset the global economy in a way that benefits you. Okay, so these are three strategic objectives of Iran in this war. Let's look at America. America is, okay, destroy Iran as a nation state. Okay, which basically means you destroy their desalination plants, their power plants, their universities, their reservoirs, and you try to create ethnic conflict, okay? Balkanize Iran, okay? So you basically encourage ethnic uprisings throughout the country, okay? Now, the last thing you want to do is isolate Iran. So you want to destroy Iran's capacity to trade with Russia and China, okay? So if you look at what's happening, one really strange thing about this war is that these strategic objectives are not in conflict with each other. Even if Iran is able to achieve its strategic objectives, it doesn't prevent America from achieving its strategic objectives. So in other words, at the end of this war, what we can expect is both countries achieve their strategic objectives, okay? Which is to say that America is now out of the Middle East, Israel is humbled, and the global economy is destroyed. But at the same time, Iran...
Hello, L-Dog. How are you? Good to see you. Nice to have you here.
Is destroyed as a nation state. It's balkanized. It's basically bombed back to the Stone Age. All right? All right? Does it make sense? Okay? So, and unfortunately, because the strategic objectives are different, both nations think they'll win the war. All right? Maybe objectively we think that America is losing the war, but from the American perspective, the way that they frame their strategic objectives means that from their perspective, they are winning the war. And that's why they think that any day now, Iran will surrender. But from the Iranian perspective, they think they're winning the war, and they think that any day now, America will surrender. That's why it's impossible to get the two to negotiate a peace settlement. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, all right, okay, all right. So on Thursday, we're doing something really interesting, okay? We are having a midterm examination, but rather than me test you, you're gonna test me, okay? So what I want you to do is think about what we've learned this semester.
All right, so there you have it. I think that was a really good lesson. Put a 1 in the chat if you guys like this type of information. Put a 2 if you don't care for it. Let's see if we will continue to have these type of shows, but I thought the information was quite beneficial, being that we're not discussing wars all the time, but I thought the information was pretty solid. Okay, so now we're going to move on. We're going to get back to some of the news reports. So let's hang tough. Thank you guys for all you do. Thanks for all the likes, shares, and those that a lot of people subscribe tonight, and that's a beautiful thing. So now we're going to check out what Newt Gingrich has to say in regards to this.
Welcome back to the show. Great pleasure. Newt Gingrich, former House Speaker, Fox News contributor. Newt, welcome as always. My biases, if you heard the riff, you'll hear my biases. But hear this too, that we're going to have a 2-week extension for the talks and for the opening up the Strait of Hormuz.
Thank you, JL. And thank you guys for hitting the like button, share, subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Let's see. DJ Genesis says there's a person that I didn't even have the gas pump pumping gas. It was just tallying up the price and wasn't even pumping any gas. Oh my goodness. Sound like you need to go to a different place. My good heavens.
This is Iran's game. This is what they always do. You know, we want to postpone, we want extensions, we want ceasefires, we want to have arguments about the location, who sits at the table, all this nonsense. I think the time is to strike right now, Newt Gingrich. Right now, the time is here to strike. What do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, a Pakistani proposal isn't the same as an Iranian proposal. I'd be very surprised if the Iranians agree that they're going to open the straits for the next 2 weeks. That would allow virtually all.
So you guys are starting to see what I've been trying to say for the last couple of days, right? So, and also Lisa pointed it out from the very beginning of this show. Do we have a deal today, a 2-week extension between the United States and Iran? Or do we have a deal between the United States and Pakistan? And if that's the case, then tomorrow we might see some explosives flying through the air, right? So it gets so confusing because a lot of times everybody wants to hear the good news and things are being spun as though it's glad tidings and good news. But then the next day we see something major happen and we're like, well, what happened? Because we're not getting the full extent of the truth or the story, it gets to be confusing, right? But we are America first. We live in America. Most people take that type of mentality. We're not taking away from that, but we're just telling you how this gets to be confusing.
All the ships that are bottled up to get out of there, and would be a huge decline in their leverage. Larry, I think this is simple, but very hard. The simplicity is this. You have a dictatorship, religiously motivated, which has now for 47 years chanted death to America, and which has been consistently trying to get missiles and nuclear weapons that could reach
Thank you very much, Jerome.
America. No, that's just a fact. On the other hand, if we are not prepared to stop them now, then 10 years from now, if we lose Chicago or Seattle or Boston, and the media says, oh my God, how did this happen? Well, it happened because the Pritzkers and the Schumers and all of the people who kept whining, in fact, blocked the United States from what it should do.
Thank you so much, Uncommon Woman. Good to see you.
The president has to have, I think, 2 major agreements. One, that the Strait of Hormuz is international water and will never, ever again be blocked by Iran. And 2, that the Iranians will give up both their missile program and their nuclear program. If he can't get those 2 agreements, as a historian, and somebody, I just wrote a piece on Churchill and Hitler. Churchill kept saying for a decade, look at who these people are. And he kept saying, if you don't stop them now, it's going to get a lot worse. So I would say to the president and for the country, we have to insist on an Iran that is not a danger to the American people.
You know, the president of the United States consulted with Condoleezza Rice, and she told him, finish the job, get it over with, basically.
And the time to save Chicago or St. Louis or Washington is now, not after we lose a city.
When you look at the conditions set by the United States, and when you look at the response from Iran, they're dealing at 2 different planets. I mean, I've said that from day one. When it says Iran is willing to negotiate over what? They've already rejected our 15 points, and even if you boil it down to opening up the strait, the enriched uranium, not only do they have to stop, but they have to turn over their stockpile of it. They're not going to do that. They'll never do that peacefully. They're never going to walk across the line and say, here, take this. And the ballistic.
I need someone to do me a favor, perhaps one of the moderators, but look up how much enriched uranium does Iran have. I think it's either 100 or 1,000 pounds. Let's see. Can someone look it up to see how much? And this is information a lot of people are not talking about. I don't think they realize that Iran still is cultivating and still has this uranium that they're processing. So let's see the amount.
Missiles. I mean, you know, when they fired those two missiles into the Indian Ocean, I know one was intercepted and the other one fizzled out, but nonetheless, that was 2,500 miles or so. That was a shocker. I mean, that's why it's an imminent threat. So I don't understand why we would negotiate, you know, 2 weeks. What does that mean? That's Iran's game. If it's Iran, I mean, I don't know what you're right about the Pakistani prime minister. Who does he speak for? And I haven't seen the cold print, so I don't know what's in it. But to continue to string along and play along makes no sense at all. He has a chance, Newt, I'll be honest. Trump has a chance to be one of the greatest presidents in American history.
Okay, guys, so here we have it from Anderson. Iran currently possesses approximately 900 to 972 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60%. So I was close when I said 1,000. So that's a lot. And I think if you actually dig a little deeper, I forget the exact numbers, but that's enough to create a certain amount of missiles that would do a lot of damage. And keep in mind that right now, a lot of people don't realize it, but Iran can reach at least 4,000 miles. So they could do a lot of destruction right through Europe as well. And I don't think people understand that in order for them to reach the United States, they need to be able to go at least 6,000 miles or close to that. So they're getting there. So it's something to think about. I just want you to have a well-rounded view of what we're dealing with.
He has a chance to do that. And he has to do it through war, okay? Maybe that's regrettable, but that is what, and he has done it. And our military has done it in an alliance with Israel. And this is a historical moment.
He's the former Speaker of the House. That's who he is, thanks.
And I don't want to see it slip away, Newt. That's, I guess, my point. I don't want it to slip away.
You know, President Franklin...
Now, we have Carpe Diem. He says, guess which country stole nuclear material from America? Israel. Right. I want you guys to also, I'll actually break it down for you guys tomorrow because we have so much to get through. But I think it was in 1974, we had a ship that was out on the Red Sea that was, I don't want to use the B word, a lot of explosives fell from the sky. And guess who blew up the American ship? It was Israel. So all of this and more we're going to get into when we can. But right now we're going to stay focused with this.
Roosevelt, trying to convince the American people that the Nazis and Adolf Hitler were truly a threat, gave a radio address in September of 1941 and said, if you're standing next to a rattlesnake, you don't have to wait until it bites you to crush it. When somebody says to you, for 47 straight years, death to America, when despite bombing and everything else.
Now, when he's talking about the 47 years, I showed you guys, I think it was in 1979, when the hostages were taken and you had this whole chant going, death to America has been healthy for some 47 years. And also, I believe it was in 1980, the following year that Donald Trump came out. And there's a video I showed you guys about 2 weeks ago where Trump says we need to do something about Iran back in 1980. So Iran has been on the president's radar way before he even thought about becoming the president of the United States. And I keep trying to stress that under his first administration, he had his eyes set on Iran even then, right? So, but he lost to Joe Biden. But when he came back in office, he came back to finish the job. So this is what we're starting to see.
They insist on building a nuclear program and missiles, as you point out, that now are good enough to reach Europe when it's clear that they're prepared to kill 46 or 47,000 of their own people in the last 3 months to stay in power. How much evidence do our friends in the media, in the Democratic Party, in the elite establishment, how much more evidence they need? This is a bad regime prepared to do bad things. And what is at stake is American cities. And we need to drive this home. If you want to cave into Iran, then you're either prepared to kowtow and allow the Iranians to dominate, or you're prepared to risk losing city after city. And anybody who is not prepared to be honest about it, you just need to call them out. Because this, I think, Larry, and I think you agree with this, I think this is one of the most pivotal moments.
Yes.
Trump has shown enormous courage
Yes.
in getting us to this moment. But now's when it counts.
Yes.
This is Lincoln at Gettysburg. This is the moment when you have to stand firm if, in fact, you want to save the country.
Yes, sir. I don't want this moment to slip away. You are so right, Newt Gingrich. Thank you. Appreciate it very, very much.
Okay, very good. So that was good information. Now we're going to move on and check out a few more excerpts in regards to what's happening around the world, especially when it comes to Iran. Let's get to it.
President Donald Trump handed out a deadly deadline for Iran. One Iranian American here in Baltimore County saying it's a necessary sacrifice. A whole civilization will die tonight. A strong threat from President Donald Trump to Iran. Trump posting on Truth Social, he'll act on the threat if Iran fails to strike a deal that includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz by his deadline. That deadline being 8 p.m. on Tuesday. Iranian-American Shapur Talamuri, owner of House of Kebab in Parkville, supports Trump's comments. He says Trump's threat is a necessary sacrifice for Iranians to make to get rid of.
So here, I wanted to play this because you have a chance to hear from someone from Iran.
The Iranian regime.
Imagine if war ends and they stay in the power. It's just going to be, they're going to wipe out the whole people. It's just, at least this is a sacrifice Iranian people are making to get the freedom, to get rid of the regime.
In an Easter post on Truth Social, Trump threatened to target Iran's bridges and power plants. While experts say that would be a war crime, Iranian officials tell citizens to form human chains around power plants.
I hate to see that my people die. I hate to see the country go through that, but has to happen.
Talamuri says other Iranians feel the same after seeing what the Iranian government has done.
Every day they are hanging people without any court, without any documentation, just because they came and said they wanted freedom. One of our closest friends' brother got killed. And then they were just because they just wanted.
So what do you guys think about this from an individual that is from Iran?
Just wanted freedom. And when he left, he said, I know I might not come back.
But he isn't hopeful they'll come to the table.
I wouldn't trust them because even if they come to some kind of agreement, basically for them, from their background, they are basically regrouping to start war again because you cannot trust these people.
He tells me moving forward, he's standing 100% behind Trump.
The only hope we have that President Trump get rid of that regime, and he has said he will, and we are standing 100% behind him, that this will happen.
Iran's Navy command posted on social media saying the Strait of Hormuz will never return to its former state.
Jeff says everyone wants freedom. All right, very good. Okay. JL says, I do hope that the Iranian people are given better lives, especially the women. I empathize for the women. All right, very good. Jerome says Trump did not want to give the money for that Venezuela money either. He said he was going to give it to the people. What happened to that? Good point. Solid point. Great question. Portia says we can't trust Trump. All right. Okay, guys, we're going to look at what's happening with Soleimani's family. We'll get into the history of this as well. It's very important. In fact, I didn't even know his family was living out west.
A Fox News alert, 2 relatives of a top Iranian commander who was killed during President Trump's first term are now in federal custody and facing possible deportation. This after Secretary of State Marco.
When the president took his life during the first administration, that should tell you right there that he had his eyes set on Iran. But again, I keep saying he lost the election.
Rubio revoked their green cards. The niece of the late General Soleimani is known as a regime apologist who promoted the IRGC even while she and her daughter lived a very luxurious Western lifestyle. Joining us now is Sheila Nazarian. She fled Iran as a child. She's now a plastic surgeon. She joins us now. And Sheila, as we were saying, these are pretty stressful times. I want to read to you this headline from an Arab news article saying that the U.S. arrest of slain IRGC.
So basically, she was living high on the hill, eating the best cabbage and talking about the president. And what we're starting to see that anybody that takes this type of position, or the individuals that were working against the president, we went over it today at lunch, Letitia James, James Comey, all these individuals are taking heat from the president. It's another reason why Don Lemon is facing big heat, because he was talking about the president pretty much every day with his channel, which he's covering the news, but he put himself in a position to where the feds could really come after him, so much so that they arrested him.
Commander's kin lays bare scandalous double standards as Iran continues crackdown on women's freedoms. Images of the 2 women living lavishly in LA spark anger online. Have you heard the same?
Absolutely, Dana. These women are posting in bikinis on yachts. They are wearing V-neck dresses down to their belly buttons. They are wannabe Instagram influencers, all on the blood money.
They probably had no clue that the federal government was watching them. But do they know? They know now.
That was embezzled, stolen from the Iranian people. And there's thousands of them, Dana, not just 2. There's thousands in the U.S. and Canada and in London. And they are such hypocrites. You can show a few strands of hair in Iran, get 74 lashes. I've seen women kicked to the ground, kicked in their heads while on the ground for violating the hijab policy in Iran. Women have been raped. Women have been killed for showing their hair. Much less these women showing, like if you look at their Instagram, it's infuriating. They're on yachts, they're on helicopters, they're shopping on Rodeo Drive, half naked. And it's almost like, rules for thee, but not for me in full display.
Sheila, the Department of Homeland Security said this about her, that her trips to Iran illustrate her asylum claims were fraudulent. If we have reason to believe a green card holder poses a threat to the U.S., the green card will be revoked. It's interesting that she would try to claim asylum.
We see that all the time, unfortunately, Dana, not just with these Iranian, elites' daughters, but we see it in the Somali community as well. My family claimed asylum and came here in 1986, and we have never returned because if we do, we will get killed. Meanwhile, you see these Iranians or these Somalis vacation in the country that they're claiming asylum from. That is not a real asylum claim. If they were really afraid for their lives, they would not be vacationing in their home countries.
We just had Brett Baer on, and he had spoken to President Trump just a few moments ago, and it looks like this 8 p.m. deadline, it's a very serious one. And I'm wondering if you could give us some perspective about how you and your family are thinking about this moment.
Yeah, and I want to, address the 2 French prisoners that were released. Perhaps that wasn't a good faith thing. Perhaps that was because France denied Israeli airspace to transport U.S. weapons, and that was the deal they made with Iran. Dana, there is no good faith negotiations with this regime. This regime has shown for 47 years that they use negotiations as a stall tactic, as a delay tactic, and a tool in their armamentarium to do whatever it is that they want in secret. They're unfortunately, and I hate to say it, I hate war, I hate death, I hate killing, I'm a physician. But with this regime, they understand no other language but force, and they are willing to sacrifice their most vulnerable. They told the children to go stand in front of the targets that Trump claimed he was going to bomb tonight. So they don't care about their people. All they
keep in mind that's a war crime to have that administered.
They care about is power, money, and a worldwide caliphate, and they understand no other language other than force. And if that's the language they want us to speak, we will speak it.
Sheila, let's stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now this next video may not be appealing to everyone. I just want to warn you. But basically, CNN is going to show you how the Democrats are looking pretty strong for the midterm elections. Let's check it out.
I want to talk about a state that Donald Trump has won three times, but it looks to me that Roy Cooper, the former governor of the great state of North Carolina, has a real shot here. Look at the Kalshi prediction market. Chance Cooper, the Dem, actually wins this race. His chances have gone way up. Back on October 7th, if it was 63%, of course, that was 6 months ago. Now, look at this, an 86% chance to flip a Senate seat in a state that Donald John Trump won by 3 points, and he is the clear favorite at this point, the former governor.
Now, we call it a chance for a Democratic breakthrough, right?
Yes.
But one thing I do want to point out is there have been Democrats in the Senate from North Carolina before, fairly recently, but maybe I'm dating myself here.
I think you're dating yourself a little bit here, Mr. Berman. Why do I say that? Because, in fact, the last Democrat to actually win a Senate race in North Carolina was back when I was in college. It was Kay Hagan back in 2008. In fact, the only living former Democratic senator is John Edwards, who won all the way back. The last midterm win was in 1998. I was in elementary school there, grammar school there, to really dating myself. That is how long ago. But as you pointed out, this 2008 was a wave year. And what you see is when Democrats do well nationally, and they are doing well right now, you can, in fact, flip a Senate seat, as right now Roy Cooper is forecasted to flip in North Carolina.
All right, so in a wave year, Democrats can do well because maybe the president's dragging the incumbent party down in the state. What is the president's approval in North Carolina?
Yeah, okay, so Donald Trump has won North Carolina 3 times. He won it by 3 points back in 2024. But right now, he is dragging Democrats down because...
Guys, I have 2 more points to get to. Then we're going to spend about 20 minutes going through the 10 points that Iran wants through Pakistan, obviously. But stick around. We're going to get to it tonight.
Just take a look here. Look at this. Okay, Trump's net approval rating in North Carolina. John's off on the side laughing. Look at this. In spring of 2025, Donald Trump was 3 points underwater overall. Among independents, he was 18 points underwater. Look at how low he has fallen now. Among independents, he's 42 points underwater. And overall, he's 15 points underwater. Right now, North Carolina is not a pink state. It is much more of a purple, dare I say, light blue state with how unpopular Donald Trump is, dragging down Republicans, and he may, in fact, push Roy Cooper into the Senate.
And again, once again, I'll just point out the independents here, and that
This
is a
is
staggering. And I was only laughing at your physicality. You must burn thousands of calories during this segment. All right, we're talking about it. The president's net approval there. How about the war?
How about the war? This is just another thing that I think is dragging down Republicans in the state. Look at this net approval of U.S. military action in Iran among North Carolinians, among all voters, 19 points underwater. Again, this independent number, look at this. We're talking 41 points underwater. This war, if it continues on, will continue to drag Republican candidates down across the political map.
All right, very interesting to see that, particularly in a state where there is a large military presence. And this one is for political junkies out there, because I think there's no Supreme Court in the country that is as closely watched, for whatever reason, as the Wisconsin court. There is a Supreme Court seat up tomorrow. It is a, right now, conservative held seat, and if liberals are able to flip it, again, it's not party registration there, but think R&D, conservative liberal. If liberals are able to switch it would give them really an overwhelming majority on that court. Let's get to CNN chief data analyst Harry Etten. I can't explain why everyone cares so much about Wisconsin Supreme Court, so just take my word for it, we do. What are the prediction markets saying about this race, first of all?
I'm just a big fan of Green Bay. That's what's going on here. Look, the bottom line is this. Chris Taylor, the liberal candidate, a heavy favorite going into tomorrow. Chance Taylor wins the Supreme Court race. Look at this. 99% according to the Kalshi prediction markets. Again, this race is officially nonpartisan, but she's the liberal in this race, and this would take the court from 4-3 liberal to 5-2 liberal. Democrats, liberals, very ecstatic going into the polls tomorrow. Of course, we'll have to wait and see.
One of the reasons I know we watch Wisconsin so closely is because it's the closest thing I think that we have to a 50-50 state. It's basically 50-50 in presidential elections. So we're always looking for trends on who might have an edge there. Where's the enthusiasm?
Okay, I think this is why it's so important. Look, political junkies like John and myself, we're very interested in who controls the Wisconsin Supreme Court. For the rest of you out there, the normies out there, why is Wisconsin so important? John mentioned, of course, it's split on the presidential level. But more than that, the trends in Wisconsin tend to go countrywide. What are we talking about in terms of this? Enthusiasms, to quote my dear friend John Berman there, quoting somebody else. More enthusiastic voters for 2026. Look at this. At this point for the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, Democrats have a 19-point edge on extremely motivated, extremely enthusiastic voters. Look how similar that is to what we're seeing in the national polls for the U.S. race for Congress, right? Look at that. Democrats by 17. So what happens in Wisconsin, very unlikely to stay in Wisconsin. It is reflective of what we're seeing nationally, which is Democrats are revved up and ready to go.
Which we, in fact, have seen in other off-year elections, yes?
Yes, this is exactly right. Wisconsin is part of a trend. Talk about the major statewide elections, right? Take a look here in the 2025-2026 cycle so far. Democrats won in New Jersey governor. They won in Virginia governor. Will they win in Wisconsin? Supreme Court, we'll have to wait and see. But it looks a whole heck of a lot like what we saw back in the 2017-2018 cycle, right? NJ Gov, Virginia Gov, Wisconsin Supreme Court, they flipped the seat there back in 2018. And of course, Democrats went on to win the U.S. House bigly back in 2018. Democrats are hoping to go 3 for 3 again, and therefore they would, in fact, go on and win the House come November.
What has the Trump era meant for the Wisconsin Supreme Court?
Yeah, okay. So let's bring it back local to Wisconsin, to those cheeseheads who are watching us from the Badger State. What does it mean? Okay, liberal-held Wisconsin Supreme Court seats. Pre-Trump, liberal...
Did he say cheeseheads?
Liberals only held 29% of the Wisconsin Supreme Court seats. Look at this. If the liberal wins tomorrow, if Taylor wins tomorrow, look at that. 71%. Donald Trump has made Wisconsin, at least on the Supreme Court level, a very liberal state.
And this will be a trend that Democrats will hope to carry until November. Harriet, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
We got a lot of news. So in the latest CNN poll, it showed that Democrats have a 6-point lead in the race for Congress. And there are two ways to look at that, a 6-point lead. One, and say, hey, the Democrats are ahead there. Democrats should feel good about that. The other way to look at it is to say, for Democrats, is 6 points really enough? CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton is here. And that's the way that I think a lot of people are beginning to question this. Given the political wins and whatnot, is 6 points really a big enough lead for Democrats?
Well, I would say this, Mr. Berman, and that is that this lead is historically low for Democrats at this point with a Republican president. Because take a look here, and I'm taking a look at the average of all the polls. Dem generic congressional ballot lead at this point in the cycle with the Republican president. On average, their lead's actually slightly less. It's 5 points. That's less than it was back in 2018 when it was 8 points, and way less than it was during the 2006 cycle when it was 11 points. So yeah, Democrats are ahead, but they're only ahead by 5 with a president whose net approval rating is bordering on -20 to -30, depending on what polls you look at. You'd make the argument Democrats should be way ahead, and they're just only sort of slightly ahead.
Now, to be clear, 5 points might be enough for them to retake the House, which is really a narrow margin. Yeah. Would not take much at all for Democrats to get this.
Would blow it.
The Senate is a different matter.
Yeah, the Senate is a different matter. I think 5 points is enough to take back the House. But in the Senate, 5 points is almost certainly not enough if you apply it to the Senate map. Why do I say that? Because let's just take a look. GOP would win the
Thank you very much, Uncommon Woman.
Senate with this map. Let's say Republicans only hold on to the states that Trump won by greater than 10 points. That would, in fact, give them the Senate 51 to 49. Why? Because what you would see is
Anderson, I'm with you. They lost me about 10 minutes ago, too.
You would see that the Democrats would flip North Carolina. They would flip Maine, but Republicans would hold on to Ohio, they'd hold on to Texas, and they'd hold on to Alaska because Donald Trump won all of those states by greater than 10 points. And I will note, John and I were talking, we have the NCAA tournament going on. This is sort of the chalk scenario going on where the most obvious events actually do occur. Because take a look, during the Trump era, look at this, flip the Senate seat, midterm and presidential years. States the other party won by 10 plus points in the last presidential election. 0 times did a party flip those states. So we're talking about places like Texas, Alaska, Ohio, where Trump won by double digits.
Which is why the Democrats might need a bigger lead than they have now if the Senate is really in play. What else is going on now for the Democrats?
Are you guys aware that a Democrat actually won the district for Mar-a-Lago? Isn't that crazy?
That maybe should cause them concern.
What might cause them concern? Why is that generic congressional ballot lead so low? Because just take a look at this. Net favorability. Party ahead at this point. Midterm years with the GOP president. In 2018, Dems were up by 12.
Guys, Grumpy is very optimistic. He says in 2 weeks, if gas prices drop, Republican numbers will go back up. They'll be back to the ceiling, right?
2006 on net favorability. Which party you like more? Dems are ahead by 18. Republicans are actually ahead on net favorability at this point by 5 points. So Democrats are just simply put running behind their previous benchmarks.
Imagine going on a road trip with this guy in the car talking the whole way. That would absolutely, I'm pretty quiet, so that would absolutely drive me crazy. Remember that song, Drive Me Crazy? All right, so we got one more video we're going to get to, but you get an idea where they're headed. And already when I covered the Clinton's deposition, I keep telling you, most of the representatives were saying that when the Democrats win the midterms, first order of business is to impeach Donald J. Trump and also have his wife and him sit for the deposition, just as the Clintons had to sit in the hot seat. So if the Democrats come back strong, the president of the United States is going to have the worst last 2 years that he probably could ever dream of. All right, let's move on to our final video for tonight.
Today, the United States stands at a crossroad. It is time to remove Donald Trump from the presidency. This morning, the President of the United States used his social media platform to threaten to wipe a civilization from the face of the planet. Let us be clear. Not only is this activity unbefitting a president
The senators are pushing back, folks. What do you think about this?
of the United States, but it is the threat of actual crimes against humanity and war crimes under international law. And it is clear that Donald Trump is no longer...
Oh my goodness. Pat says, check out what Pat says. Says Mar-a-Lago, there was a guy caught on camera cheating on votes.
nor has he ever been fit to serve as president of this United States and as the commander-in-chief of our military. Now, there are a number of tools that can be used to remove him from the presidency, but we cannot do it alone. We need our colleagues across the aisle, the Republicans who control the White House, the cabinet, the Senate, and the
How much you guys want to bet in 2 weeks she'll be under investigation?
House to find the courage and the backbone to act not only for the humanity of this planet, but for the national security and well-being of this country. And so that is why I am calling for the invocation of the 25th Amendment by the cabinet, why I am calling for the impeachment by Congress, and why I am calling for the passage of a war powers resolution in Congress to stop this president right now. Now, it's important to understand that these tools are the tools that we have at our disposal to stop this president. It is what the Constitution allows us to do. In the case of the 25th Amendment, as was passed and ratified in 1967, Section 4 has never been utilized in the United States before, but it provides that the vice president and a majority of the cabinet can call for the president to no longer serve as president and for the vice president to step in and to act if he is incapacitated. Congress cannot do this on its own. This is an action that must be taken by a vice president and by the cabinet. And if the president contests that action, then Congress has to act by a 2/3 vote in both chambers. And so while it is not a silver bullet for solving this issue at this moment, it is the most immediate action that could be taken to remove the president from the dangerous and life-threatening position that he is currently occupying. Now, Congress still must act. We must impeach this president. It is clear under our constitutional duty that he has committed high crimes and misdemeanors of manyfold. And so we must pursue impeachment, but the most immediate path to removal is the 25th Amendment, but that requires the cabinet to act. And so we are calling on our Republican colleagues in the cabinet, we are calling on our Republican colleagues in the Congress to do the right thing for this country, for the American people, and for the safety and well-being of millions across this planet. Because
All right. So if you agree with her, put a 1 in the chat. If you go against what she's saying, put a 2. Let's see how many people are with her on this dream of removing the president of the United States.
this cannot stand. It is clear that he has become incapacitated and is not fit to serve as our president and as the commander-in-chief, and we must stop any potential crimes before they could happen. Now, in order to do any of this, it requires that our Republican colleagues step up and meet the moment for the American people. That means that the Speaker of the House and the leadership in the Senate must call us back into session in Washington, D.C. immediately. And it means that our colleagues must find the courage to act. This is the moment.
All right. So this is the moment. Quite a few people are in agreement with her. Thank you guys for participating in the poll. We have one more thing to get to before we can call it a night, folks. It's been a long night. The live I did today was 2 hours around lunchtime, and now we're well over 2.5 hours again. So it's been quite a long day, but a pretty good day, I would say. So I'm going to show you guys, we're going to break down these 10 points to see what Iran wants by way of Pakistan. So I won't be surprised if tomorrow we wake up to some smoke, though. But let's check it out, folks.
Not the summary, not the headline, not the one-sentence version. You start to understand that what Iran did was not refuse peace. What Iran did was tell America exactly what winning looks like from the other side of this war. Nobody is reading the list. That is the problem. Because if people read it, they would realize this war is not where they have been told it is. Let me walk you through all 10 points one by one in plain language. Because once you see what Iran is actually asking for...
So guys, these are the 10 points that Iran is asking for and that are very important for the next 2 weeks. We're going to breeze through this and call it a night. Thank you guys for being here. We're coming to the end of this show.
The question stops being, why did Iran say no, and becomes something much more uncomfortable. Can America say no to this forever? First, let me explain how this document came to exist because that matters. 3 countries, Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt, put together a ceasefire proposal. Not America, not Iran. 3 outside countries that are watching this war tear the region apart and decided to step in and try to broker something before it gets worse. Their proposal was simple. Stop fighting for 45 days. Open the Strait of Hormuz.
Thank you, Sophies. Thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you guys for all you do.
Sit down and negotiate a permanent deal within 15 to 20 days. That is a reasonable starting point. 45 days of quiet. Hormuz opens. The world breathes. Negotiations begin. On paper, it sounds like the kind of thing both sides should be able to agree to just to stop the bleeding. America's response was cautious, but open. Trump called it interesting. His team said they were reviewing it. Iran's response was different. Iran did not say, we will think about it. Iran did not say, no. Iran sent back a formal 10-point counter-proposal through Pakistan's diplomatic channels. A written document. Official letterhead. This is not a press conference statement or a social media post. This is a government sending another government a list of conditions through a mediator. That is how serious negotiations start, not how they end. But the way it was reported You would think Iran just slammed the door shut. Iran rejects ceasefire. Every headline, every channel, every anchor. 5 words that tell you almost nothing about what actually happened. Here is what is actually on the list. Point 1. Iran demands a permanent end to the war. Not a 45-day pause. Not a temporary ceasefire. A permanent, complete, irreversible end to military operations. Iran's position is that a temporary pause does nothing except give America time to reposition, rearm, and resume bombing from a better angle. Iran has watched what temporary ceasefires look like in the Middle East. It watched Gaza. It watched Lebanon. A pause is announced, conditions are not met, bombing resumes. Iran is saying, we are not interested in a break. We are interested in it being over. Point 2. Iran demands the complete lifting of all American sanctions. Not a reduction, not a partial easing, all of them. Gone. These sanctions have been strangling Iran's economy for years, long before this war started. Ordinary Iranians cannot access international banking. They cannot sell oil on the open market at full price. They cannot import medicine and equipment without going through a maze of restrictions that drives prices up and availability down. Iran is saying, if you want peace, the economic war ends too. You do not get to stop dropping bombs while continuing to starve us financially. Point 3. Iran demands an end to what it calls other wars in the region. This is about Israel. This is about Lebanon. This is about the broader military campaign that did not start on February 28th. It started long before that, with strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, assassinations of Iranian scientists and commanders, and military operations across multiple countries that Iran sees as a single connected war being fought on different fronts. Iran is telling America, you cannot make peace with us while your closest ally continues to bomb our allies. Now pause here for a moment, because these first 3 points alone tell you something important about where Iran's head is at. These are not the demands of a country that thinks it is losing. These are not the desperate requests of a government about to collapse. A country on its knees asks for a pause, accepts whatever conditions it can get, and hopes to survive long enough to rebuild. Iran is not doing that.
Hey, thank you to a man called David. Thanks for subscribing. I really do appreciate you. And what's happening to you, Asia?
Iran is laying out terms that sound like what a country demands when it believes time is on its side. But there is more on the list, and the remaining points are where it gets really interesting. Point 4, Iran demands a formal protocol for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. This is the one that should get the most attention and is getting the least. Iran is not saying it will open Hormuz unconditionally. Iran is saying it will open Hormuz under a system that Iran helps design and control. Think about what that means. Before this war, ships sailed through Hormuz freely. Iran is now proposing a world where passage through those waters happens according to rules that Iran has a hand in writing. If that becomes the new normal, Iran has permanently changed the power dynamics of the most important shipping lane on Earth. Not by keeping it closed forever, but by making its reopening conditional on Iranian participation in how it operates. Point 5. Iran demands reconstruction commitments. This means money. 38 days of American and Israeli bombs have destroyed infrastructure across more than 20 of Iran's 31 provinces. Roads, bridges, power stations, water treatment plants, factories, universities. More than 30 universities have been hit since this war started. Iran is saying, you broke it, you pay for it. This is not unusual in peace negotiations. Reparations have been part of ending wars for centuries. But it is unusual for a country that the other side claims is on the verge of defeat to be demanding that the winning side write checks. I want to stop here and connect something, because there is a detail that happened on the same day Iran sent these demands that most people are not putting together with the 10-point list, and it changes how you read everything I just told you. On April 6th, the same day this document was being transmitted through Pakistani channels, the United States and Israel hit South Pars. If you do not know what South Pars is, it is Iran's single largest petrochemical complex. It sits on the coast, and it is responsible for roughly half of all of Iran's petrochemical production. After the strike, Israel's defense minister announced that more than 85% of Iran's petrochemical export capacity is now inoperable. 85%. That is not damage. That is economic destruction on a scale most people have not fully processed yet. On that same day, a joint American-Israeli airstrike killed Major General Majid Kadimi, the head of the IRGC's intelligence organization. If you are not familiar with the IRGC, it is the most powerful military and intelligence organization in Iran, more powerful than the regular army, more connected to the country's leadership, more involved in every strategic decision Iran makes. Kademi had been inside that organization for nearly 50 years. He was described as effectively the number 2 figure in the entire IRGC. He survived every previous wave of targeting since the war started. He did not survive this one. 2 other senior Quds Force commanders were killed in the same period. The head of Unit 840, which runs Iran's unconventional warfare operations, and another high-ranking officer. So hold both of these pictures in your mind at the same time. On one side of the table, Iran is sending a 10-point list through Pakistan that reads like victory conditions. On the other side, Iran's largest industrial complex is burning, and its top intelligence commander is dead. This is the contradiction that nobody is explaining clearly, and it is the contradiction that tells you more about where this war actually stands than anything else. Here's what I think it means, and I want you to sit with this before you react because your first instinct is going to be to pick a side. Either Iran is bluffing or Iran genuinely believes it can outlast this. Iran has watched 6 weeks of American bombing destroy massive amounts of its infrastructure. Its petrochemical industry is functionally gone. Its top commanders are being picked off. Its nuclear facilities were hit in the opening hours of the war. By any traditional military measure, Iran is taking catastrophic losses. And yet, Iran is not asking for mercy. Iran is not begging for a pause. Iran is sending a document that says, end the war permanently. Lift every sanction, stop all regional military operations, let us help write the rules for Hormuz, and pay to rebuild what you destroyed. Either Iran's leadership has completely lost touch with reality, which is possible, or Iran's leadership has made a calculation that the damage it is absorbing is survivable, and that the damage it is inflicting in return on the global economy, on oil prices, on American political unity, on the daily lives of ordinary people in every country that depends on Gulf oil, is not. $4.10 per gallon at the pump in America right now. 37% higher than before this war started on February 28th. $109 per barrel of oil on the global market. Freight costs, the price of shipping anything anywhere by sea, up 500%.
Right now it's $113 a barrel.
The Strait of Hormuz is at 0 traffic, not reduced traffic, not slow traffic, 0. The International Energy Agency said this week in plain language that in April there is nothing moving through the strait. Nothing. The most important shipping lane in the world, 20% of all the oil on Earth passes through it on a normal day, is completely shut. What does that mean for you, specifically? A family driving a normal amount in the United States is paying over $1,000 more per year just in gasoline compared to 2 months ago. Your grocery bill is higher because everything that arrives at a store arrives on a truck, and trucks run on diesel, and diesel is up. Your heating bill is higher. The cost of everything connected to energy, which is everything, has gone up because of what is happening in a waterway most Americans could not find on a map 6 weeks ago. That is the war showing up not on a battlefield, but at every gas station and grocery store and electric bill in America. Iran knows this. These 10 demands are not written in ignorance of what is happening on the ground. They are written in full awareness of it. Iran is saying, yes, you are destroying our infrastructure, and we are destroying your economy. The question is, who breaks first? Here is the question I want to put to you, and I want you to think carefully before you answer, because the people who answer this differently are going to have a very important argument in the comments. Iran's petrochemical industry is 85% gone. Its top intelligence commander is dead. Its cities are being bombed every night. And Iran just sent America a list of 10 demands that includes reparations and a permanent seat at the table for how the Strait of Hormuz operates. Is Iran delusional, making demands it has no power to enforce? Or has Iran figured out something about this war that Washington has not admitted yet? That military damage and strategic leverage are not the same thing? Write delusional or leverage in the comments. And when someone writes the opposite of what you chose, tell them why they are wrong, because that is the argument that gets to the heart of this entire war. Now let me take you through the remaining points on Iran's list, because we are not done yet, and the second half has details that change the picture even further. Point 6. Iran demands international guarantees, not just American promises. Iran wants third-party countries to serve as guarantors of any agreement. This is Iran saying, we do not trust your word alone. We have watched America walk away from the nuclear deal in 2018 after signing it in 2015. We signed an agreement, we held up our end. A new president walked in and tore it up. Iran wants other countries, probably China, Russia, maybe Pakistan, or Turkey, to serve as witnesses and enforcers of whatever deal is reached so that the next American president cannot simply undo it with a signature. Point 7. Iran demands the withdrawal of all additional American military forces that were deployed to the region specifically for this war, not the forces that were already there. The new ones, the thousands of troops from the 82nd Airborne, the extra carrier strike groups, the buildup. Iran is saying, go back to where you were before February 28th. Point 8. Iran demands a formal acknowledgement that its territorial sovereignty was violated. This is legal language that matters for what comes next. If America formally acknowledges that it conducted military operations on Iranian sovereign territory, that admission has consequences under international law. It can be cited in future legal proceedings. It changes the precedent for what is acceptable. Iran is not just asking for a word. It is asking for a legal tool it can use for decades. Point 9. Iran demands prisoner exchanges and the return of any Iranian military personnel or government officials detained during the conflict. This is standard in any peace negotiation, but the fact that it is on the list tells you Iran expects to negotiate from a position where exchanges happen on equal terms, not where one side hands over prisoners and the other side dictates. Point 10. Iran demands a timeline for implementation. Not open-ended promises, but specific dates for when sanctions are lifted, when forces withdraw, when reconstruction begins. Iran does not want a vague handshake agreement that gets delayed indefinitely. It wants a calendar. Now step back and look at this full list as a single document. What you are reading is not a rejection. It is a counteroffer. And it is a counteroffer that assumes Iran will still be standing at the table when negotiations get serious. Every single point on this list is written from the position of a government that believes it will survive this war, not win it in the traditional sense. Survive it, outlast it, be there when the dust settles and the bill comes due. There is something Trump said on April 6th that has not gotten the attention it deserves, and it connects directly to what you just heard. A reporter asked Trump whether the war was winding down or escalating. His answer, and this is a direct quote from the President of the United States during an active military conflict, was, "I don't know." 3 words. From a wartime president, 6 weeks into a campaign he launched. I don't know. That is not the answer of a leader who believes his strategy is working the way it was supposed to. That is the answer of someone who can see that the road ahead is not as clear as the one behind. And it landed on the same day that Iran sent a 10-point document that reads like Tehran already knows the answer to Trump's uncertainty and is building its strategy around it. Meanwhile, the deadline Trump set for striking Iran's power grid, what he publicly called Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, was moved again. First, it was April 6th, then 8 o'clock Eastern Time, April 7th. Each extension is described as giving diplomacy more time, but each extension is also read by Iran as further evidence that the threats are negotiating tools, not real red lines. Here is the last question I want to leave you with, and this one is the one I think matters most for understanding where this goes next. You just read Iran's complete 10-point list. You saw what they are asking for. You know that their petrochemical industry is destroyed, their commanders are being killed, their cities are being hit every night. And you know that despite all of that, they sent back a document that demands reparations, international guarantees, and a permanent role in how the Strait of Hormuz operates. At the same time, the American president said 3 words that no wartime leader wants to say. I don't know. 6 months from now, when this war is either over or still grinding forward, do you think Iran's 10 demands will look delusional? Or will they look like the opening position of the country that eventually got most of what it wanted? Write your answer, not because I want to tell you what to think, but because 6 months from now, you are going to want to come back to this video.
Okay, very good. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We had such a great show, a lot of information. I think we are in good shape understanding how to move forward in regards to this war, or whatever you want to call it. Thank you to all the moderators for hanging out all night. I know everybody had their own long respective days. Stella, thank you. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Brian. See you out here on the East Coast. A good thing, good deal. Shout out to Jerome for coming on and definitely giving away so many memberships. I was going to do a membership live today about the stock market and how it affects life right now. But folks, I've been live for more than 5 hours today. I think I've had enough. So tomorrow I'll push out that live talking about, probably bright and early in the morning, we'll talk about how at another level the stock market is being manipulated. And I'll explain to you how to use that to your advantage if you are into investing. I'll also break down some of my stock picks up today, as my bet was that the president is basically telegraphing his hand, and I knew that there would be some sort of deal today. So tomorrow I expect to see some gains, but that's for those that are investors. Not something I'm trying to promote, but if you're already in that lane, you would appreciate what I have to say in regards to the matter, because this is something that I do every day. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy your night. Thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for going through all of this material with me, and also for all of the comments, amazing comments that we received today. You guys are so amazing, and don't ever forget that. I will definitely catch you guys tomorrow for noon, for news at noon Eastern Standard Time. And let's say tomorrow is Wednesday, so tomorrow night at 8 p.m., I have a show with Candace Kelly. She's a criminal defense attorney. So she's a law professor. I'm sorry. I am so tired. She's a law professor. So if you have any questions tomorrow night, you'll be able to ask her. She is so amazing, and I look forward to having her on. So many great shows coming forth throughout the week. On Thursday, I'll be in court with Sean Diddy Combs. So I'll be in the main courtroom. I'll come back and report to you the things I observe at his appeal. So have a great night and be well. I'm so tired. Have a good night, guys. Thank you.
Different voices, but the same song. Loving a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Of harmony, painting the night. united we stand in love's pure might.